Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 470. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, and that was done purposefully, we're going to be talking about The Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade. That'll make a little bit more sense when we start talking about that. The pause was deliberate. We're also going to be talking about some of the Rebirth issues. We're continuing our exploration of what's going on with Rebirth. We're going to talk about Wonder Woman Rebirth. We're going to talk about Detective Comics. We're going to talk about Action Comics. We're going to talk about Flash #1. We're going to be talking about Aquaman #1. So we got a very packed episode, and we're glad to have you join us. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership.
Easy for you to say.
That's apparently not. Sponsoring us this episode once again is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, this is the end of the month, and it's that time where they're getting ready for the shift over to the brand new deals. I want to remind everyone to check them out next week. As soon as July kicks off, they'll be putting up the brand new deals. Usually 50% off bundles. They have deals usually run up to 75% off. They have statues, they have toys, they have posters, they have collected editions, all at amazing discounts. So be sure to check out DCBService.com. I want to remind everyone they're a digital partner, whether you do Comixology or MyDigitalComics.com. Link those accounts to your DCB Service account. They earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. Jim, what's going on over at InStockTrades.com?
Well, in Stock Trades, we got, of course, the great deals of the week, which I absolutely love these things because they give you a nice 50% off of all these deals. You know, right now on the top there, they've got Batman and Robin Eternal Trade Paper Volume 2, 50% off, $17.49. They've got Green Arrow, a celebration of 75 years. I've picked up all these celebrations of 75 years, and I really enjoy them because they've got multiple stories throughout the history of the Green Arrow. 50% off again, $19.99. And you know what? Over on the other side, the Vision Trade Paper Volume 1. It's that new Vision story that both you and I liked. It was written by Tom King. That's 50% off. It's only $8.99. It's a great story. Pick it up.
I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, I just got that Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. It was on iTunes. It was released digitally, and I'm sure on other digital platforms. It comes out later in July on Blu-ray and DVD. So I got a chance to watch it. I couldn't wait. I wanted to see it again because it had a half hour of extra footage, and I figured it was going to be mainly combat sequences. I was pleasantly surprised because a lot of it was exposition. It's a lot more narrative, a lot more story, and I'm anxious for you. I know you haven't seen it yet, and I'm anxious for you to see it because I want to get your reaction. I honestly think, this is coming from me, I loved it, but first time around. But this, I thought, added so much more to it. You know how sometimes you see some footage and you're like, why would you cut that? A lot of this was things, when we look back at our discussion, that I was thinking back in particular to things that you and Art were saying that you would have liked a little differently. Some of that stuff is addressed. Obviously not everything. It's a half an hour. But that half an hour clears up a number of things. And I would love to be a fly on the wall to know why certain things were cut. I know it's for time, and you're trying to keep that film to that, 2.5 hour sweet spot, because you're getting into a lengthy film at that point. But I don't know, man. I honestly think that there comes a point where you got to say it's a better movie with the extra half hour in. You should just leave it. And I really felt like that seeing the Ultimate Edition. This was one of those where I'm like, it's significantly better. and enough so that I would have rather seen it released that way. And not for me. I'm the geeky fan. The 2.5-hour film was great for me. I enjoyed that. You got me. I think for the people that maybe fell somewhere in the middle, this would have been a much better film for them. I don't think it would have done anything for the people that disliked it because the tone's still there. But I do think for people that fell in the middle, it clarifies some things. It makes for a better story. And there's some sequences that just, when they were extended, they just had a little more impact to them. And I thought it was really enough that I was like, wow, this is significantly better for an extra half hour. I don't know. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I love having it. Honestly, I feel like this version I'll watch over and over again. It's got the theatrical version on it. I don't have a lot of incentive to rewatch that other than I want to compare now, like what is different. But I really loved the extension of it. I thought the extra half hour was well worth it versus it being fluff material where you're like, oh, those are kind of some neat extra scenes. I enjoy extra scenes in isolation a lot of times just to kind of see where they would have gone or story they would have done. In this case, I really felt they were essential to the film. It's real strange. So I can't wait to see your reaction to it, just because I really felt like it made for a better movie.
Yeah. You know, I'm actually even more curious now to see that, and I may try to pick it up through iTunes instead of doing my normal wait for it comes out on an actual disc. Because hearing you talk, and especially I know, you didn't give me any spoilers, but there was some stuff that I wanted more information on, and you were like, oh yeah, this was exactly what Jim wanted. I'm like, I gotta see it now.
Yeah, it doesn't address everything that you said, but there were certain sequences where I'm like, oh, this is what Jim was asking for. I mean, totally what Jim was asking for. And you know what? It was like certain situations where I'm like, Jim was right. I mean, like this part having a little more here was better. So there were certain sequences where I literally was having that reaction. I'd be curious to see if you feel the same way, because that's, obviously that's my take on it. For people listening to this, I would really love, if you see this version of it, feel free to call into the show. Do you feel it was better? I mean, like, or was it yay, nay? You're kind of like, yeah, it's the same film. For me, it was significantly better. And but see, the thing is, I'm that audience, I liked the film a lot originally. So they already had me. I'm very curious, is there anybody who's out there listening to this that saw it and you're kind of like, it was okay, that felt like when you saw this version, it was better? Or something was different, or is there some change to it? I'm interested. I think it's an interesting topic when you talk about what was cut and what's not. So anyway, Jim, jumping from this, let's jump into DC Universe Rebirth and talk about Wonder Woman issue number 1. Now, I've been a big fan of Wonder Woman with the New 52, so they already had me. I liked what was going on. To both creative teams that have impacted the book, I felt it was a really great book. This book kicked it up to 11, and this is honestly a lot of my reaction to Rebirth in general. I really think DC is starting to listen to the fans globally, and for me, as a fan who's already enjoying what they've been doing, I'm loving it because I'm like, wow, it's just getting better. So it's improving what I was already digging. I think it really is in the fact that they're going back to the roots of some of these characters and really taking a look at what don't people like. Let's try to address those things without throwing everything out the window. This book in particular, I don't know if you feel for me, I feel Wonder Woman, which is already a title I was digging, is, again, significantly better because of this. Is that your reaction to this, or is it kind of just more... Ruka gets it, I think.
Well, right there's the one statement we got to just reiterate. Ruka gets it. Yeah, amazing writer. And, when this opened up, I was like, man, this is awesome. Because the swerve at the end, I did not see that's who she was visiting. I didn't see that she was visiting Cheetah. I didn't know who. I was actually thinking it was one of the gods. Maybe like Artemis. Got the goddess a hunt or somebody. That's what I was actually thinking she was visiting the whole time. I never once thought Cheetah until the very end, and that to me was an absolute wonderful twist. But I really loved the story, but I especially loved the look of the book. Yes. Liam Sharp, artist, Laura Martin, colors, outstanding. Especially you look, Wonder Woman's in the middle of the jungle. Heavy green coloring, but I loved the green palette that was used, giving you, just the distance shots, lighter shades of green, darker shades as you're closer. Just the way this was laid out looked absolutely stunning. And some of the stuff I loved about, when the green books have a really good colorist on it, and they really make it pop. Green is a color that you can do a lot with, and this was one we saw just how well a colorist who knows what they're doing can do with this book and can do with that color palette. And I was just like, it was, as I'm reading this, I was catching myself, I was stopping, just staring at pages. Normally I do that for my art read through, but I found with this one, on my first read through, I was enjoying and appreciating the artwork. I was like, man, this looks cool. And again, just the way Diana's drawn, very powerful but still beautiful. She had that same presence to her. Again, this is, they're really keeping up Wonder Woman going, and I love the fact that she's going to give her 3 warnings. And that, for me, when you have the Diana who isn't just a badass warrior who could do some damage, but is also that, the peace. She's the agent of peace. She's trying to give a chance. She's like, hey, I know you don't want me here, but I've got no other choice. I don't want to be your enemy. I'm only your enemy if you treat me as such. And I love that line. I love the fact that it kept being repeated throughout there. This is my first warning. This is your second warning. For those, I was just like hoorahing, because this is the Wonder Woman that I really appreciate. The one who knows how tough she is, but doesn't have to just go and smash everybody. She can deal with the problem with her mind, use her strategery.
I like how she's introspective. Like in the beginning when you see that opening sequence and she's going through the jungle and you see those... you talked about the artwork, and I do want to reference it again because I couldn't agree with you more. Really, really a beautiful book. I was really on board with the potential of the artwork in this book when I heard Nicholas Scott was going to be doing the alternating weeks. We're talking about the backstory, the year 1. I'm loving these issues as well, and it was a pleasant surprise for me because I was looking more forward to those just because I'm a huge fan of her artwork. This is gorgeous. But the other piece that I like, I want to talk about the costume again. I'm usually not a big fan of movies or TV driving the costume in the comics. I feel like, the comics should be the wink and the nod that you do with the movies and TV. You really want to try and get it right. You sometimes need to make modifications for movies and TV because comic book costumes, by the nature of the fact that they're drawn, and the characters are drawn to kind of fit the costume, don't necessarily work on the screen, so you have to make modifications to them. This is a great example of where you've taken, I think, what's really worked well in this most recent film, taken what's the best of the comics and melded them together. It really is very reminiscent of the film version of it. I love the color tones of it. I like that we're getting a little bit more of the reds back into it again in this particular design. I love it. And I don't mind that the head pieces change because I love that we see throughout this that old one was there with the star in the middle. So I'm like, okay, we're not throwing this out the window. This isn't yet another revolution. It does go back to that battle armor look, which I really like, but it's kind of a hybrid without it being super bulky. It's a nice mix of what I like from the classic costume and battle armor in both. And actually, you referenced this, I think it was the last time we talked about Wonder Woman. The idea that this is all about movement. And the idea that this warrior is very athletic. She needs the freedom of full motion movement. And I think you see that with the grace of this opening sequence. It's almost like a ballet in the way that she moves through the land. And I really love that because this is a very beautiful space. And she and her grace that she's going through just looks cool. Like, she feels like somebody who's very confident, very athletic, and has a grace and beauty and motion to her. Yet you're right, when you get to those sequences where she's like, I know you don't want me here, but there's that confidence and strength that's there as well. Diana, the mixture of emotions, the mixture of strength with beauty and grace and intelligence and introspection, this really captures the whole piece of what I really love about the character. And I love that, again, this feels like it's all of Diana throughout her history because she's talking about the story keeps changing. I love that this is part of the greater unfolding mystery that's going on in the universe because I'm digging all the books right now. I don't think I've been this excited in a long time. And I've been loving everything I've been reading. There's something different about this. There's something special about this. My excitement is at a very different level than it's been in a while. And it's significant to the point where I'm noticing, like, wow, I'm really just loving reading these books. I'm having a lot of fun. Fun is a big part of all this. Every book is fun in their own unique way. They've really got some strong creators on these books who are really delivering an experience, and it's the entire team they've put together for these. I hope this momentum continues, because for me right now, they're batting 1,000. Wonder Woman is a book that's batting 1,000 for me. This one I wanted to kick off this week talking about because it was one of the most exciting reads of this week for me.
Oh, I will co-sign that statement about this being one of the top reads of this week. One of. There's another one that I was like, yeah,
agreed.
I was cheering for. But we'll probably get to that next, knowing your love of Batman. The other comment I want to throw, we got to talk about, is I loved these Trevor sequences.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it was really cool that they're bringing it, that he is an active part of this book. Because as much as I did love the super couple, Diana and Bruce Clark together, I do like the fact that there is this connection these two have, and how we always talk about why when Clark is with Lois, you see why he would be in love with her. She's got that strength, she's got that character, she's got that personality. That this is why a normal mortal would get the attention of someone with godlike powers. Well, these kind of sequences with Trevor, you can understand why Diana would have that connection with him. Why Diana would actually, want to be with this guy. He's got the integrity. He's got the strength. He's got the warrior code, but he's not, he's not a barbarian. He is like, a lot of those really cool features we see in Diana, we also see in Trevor. And I like the fact that we're getting that side of him, because, if they're going to bring those two together again, he's going to have a tough road to follow, to go up, because he's following Superman. Her last boyfriend was Superman, and that's going to be a tough thing. And then last boyfriend died, so it's not even just they broke up; he's dead. So there's going to be that mourning. There's going to be that period, and I'm really curious to see how and what they bring together with these two.
He does have an advantage in that he's less dead.
Well, that is an advantage, yes, but it's hard to compete with the dead. You think about it. If Superman and Wonder Woman had ended on bad terms, it'd be easier. They ended because he died, so that's a tough thing to follow.
And they got back together right before that too.
Right.
So that makes it even doubly difficult. And really, we're at a stage where you could argue that they were ready to take the relationship to the next level. I mean, emotionally. There was a difference between where they were at, because they've been through that phase where a couple's either going to break up or stay together. You go through, this turmoil where you're like, we are in two very different places. And what happens is with a couple, you either split off and stay split off, or you find your way back together and come back stronger because of what you've learned in the absence of each other. And in this case, they had come back stronger. And I really loved that about it. This is what's great about comics. When these characters start to get three-dimensional like this, and you're talking about, like you're saying, I'm like nodding, I'm joking around about the, decidedly less dead. But you're right. I mean, this is something that feels very real. That relationship was very tangible. That story arc for Superman, that final story arc, was really cool. And I really loved the way that it all played out. And leading into this, I think, was a really smart move. Close off that chapter, but leave us with the echoes of it. Leave us with a Diana whose story has changed multiple times. And she has to kind of figure out who she is. Not just who she is, but what's real in her world. Imagine that. You've got two different histories or more going on for yourself and trying to reconcile them. And also there's this brother that we still got hanging out in there. That was another reveal that, we haven't addressed yet. The more details about who this brother is that's out there. So, I don't know. It's just a really interesting and fun story. I'm captivated by Wonder Woman. That's been a success of the New 52. I think Wonder Woman's been a book that I've really enjoyed. I think this is a great way to handle. I want to move Wonder Woman and evolve her in a new direction. I don't want to throw out the window what's come before. So let's talk about the fact that she's had a lot of different origins. And there's been a question as far as what's real, what's not in her world. Let's reconcile all that by saying and throwing it on the table, this is a thing. So instead of blowing it off, it fits the greater mystery of the universe right now. It gives us a chance to really talk about who is she really? What is her history really? And you haven't thrown anything out the window. It's very smart. This is a very smart approach to it because the mystery is interesting to me and intriguing to me. And all the more so because I'm not feeling like it's spit in the face of what came before. It addressed the fact that, well, there's a lot of different takes out there. So what is real? I like that. I really like that concept because it embraces it rather than ignores it. And I'm always a fan of that in comics, and I think it takes a clever writer to embrace all the pieces. It's one of the things I love about Jeff Johns. I think Jeff Johns is really good about embracing all the pieces parts, and Greg Rucka is obviously doing that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because as you're talking, I was just about to throw out the Jeff Johns and Hawkman. What he did for Hawkman to unify all that craziness. And Rucka, he doesn't have as big a craziness to deal with, but he does have that. He's using it part of the story, and I think for me that is always a sign of a great writer, that they can take the weaknesses out there and turn them into a strength, turn them into a story element, make it part of what is now. And it's like you said, this is part of how much of this is part of the big overall story where the universe got crazy. Who knows where that's going to go, but it has that potential for a story. Maybe it is just her mother being dishonest. Maybe it's the gods playing jokes on her. Maybe it's this. And I love the fact that there's so many maybes that this story could verge to. And when you've got that kind of possibility, you start thinking off page. You start thinking, well, what if they're doing this? What about this? And it's there's just some really just kind of what is as you said, what is real. And the one line I really did love throughout, another one I really was really like, when Diana's going through, and it was right around the time when she gives her, I think, her second warning, when she sees what Barbara's doing, and she's like, how far have you fallen, my friend? And I love just that thing where she's like, you do this for sport? And it was just a really great moment, because again, it's furthering that this is one of Wonder Woman's quote unquote rogues, but Diana doesn't see her as an evil enemy that needs to be vanquished. She actually sees her as a friend that she wants to help. She sees her as somebody that if she could do, maybe she could help her find her way back, or find her way to a positive light. And I love that about the character, the fact that she could punch her to next Tuesday, but she doesn't want to solve the problem that way. She wants to find another way to deal with it. And I think that for me, and it's a really one panel kind of subtle. The lettering kind of shrunk the size down, so she was whispering, and it was a powerful scene for one small panel.
That's everything you're saying is exactly why I have no problem saying, and this is, you're right, I'm a Batman geek. This book was so refreshing to me. This was easily my favorite book this week. And that's not taking anything away from Detective Comics, because you're right about how good that was. But for me, I don't have any hesitation in saying that, wow, this just had a lot of really well put together parts. I enjoyed so much of this issue, and the creative team and what they're doing with it. Etta Candy was great in this whole thing. I really loved having all of the basic tenets of Wonder Woman back in here with a really interesting story. And what you were just saying is exactly one of the things I like. There's some high drama being developed here that I'm finding really, really interesting with this character. And when you think about it, there's not a whole lot of beat 'em up in this. It's more of a journey, and that journey was something I was really enjoying.
Yeah. It's funny because you say there's not a lot of beat 'em up, because you're right, there isn't. There's a couple scenes with Trevor and a shooting. Diana's got her fight at the end there, which really isn't a major, your typical quote unquote superhero fight. This was you could call it a story building issue, but it was so captivating, and it was so, I didn't see it as like a filler. I didn't see it as the build to the next thing. This was, this is a story development issue, but it's still, there was still that drama. There was still that action, even though it wasn't your traditional physical punches and big explosions. There was still just that, the mental drama, the story drama, just the personal drama that was going on. And I loved how the fact that it kept you going, and just at the right time had a little soft area. Like when Trevor pulls out the picture he has of Diana, it's her mug shot. And I love that picture because you look at her, she's got this nice smile on her face, and it's a great picture, kind of like you see the innocence, because this was at the beginning of when Diana first was dealing with the world of man, that she didn't understand all the rules. She didn't probably realize she was being arrested. So I think that for me was another one of those little subtle moments that I was like, man, that's a cool thing.
Let's not ignore the line that Steve Trevor threw out there, though, because his buddies, going all, current day, saying, hey, there's a lot better pictures of her online, but this one's mine. You know, that connection to it I thought was really, really sweet. Because that shows the kind of relationship that it is. Sometimes those simple things that somebody else can't appreciate, but you have the memory. You were there. That was your moment. It can be a picture that is not the best picture out of the batch, or, you know, not the hottest picture or anything like that, which is what the guy was going for. But it is emotional. And it shows a connection between these two. And that part I really loved. I mean, this is really strong writing. Greg Rucka is known for... I'm just really glad to see Greg Rucka back at DC. Because out of the gate, 2 issues. Killer issues. This is the kind of Wonder Woman I want to be reading. I gotta say one other thing, is talking about the artwork. That last page, where Cheetah and Wonder Woman are face-to-face... First of all, I love the way Wonder Woman's face is drawn. The art styling there, I think, is really terrific. Because, again, it's another show of emotion. Almost pleading, you know, really trying to connect with Cheetah on this one. But I also love the artistic choice with Cheetah. I just really love the style. You know, we're talking about making a change to a character, Barbara Minerva, who is a character who I just really love. Cheetah grew up loving that character. I remember in Super Friends, you know, that being just one of the villains that stands out for me. That was always Wonder Woman's villain in that. So rich history with this character. Really love this choice because it's a different sort of look for Cheetah than I'm used to, and I really like it.
Oh yeah, you know, and I gotta admit that it did take probably like the second read through for me really to appreciate it. The initial read through, I was like, what? You know, it did throw me off because in a way she's got a very masculine looking face. You know, the previous iterations that I'd seen of Cheetah, you could still tell it was a female underneath her. And my first look, she had a very, you know, I actually thought she had a masculine looking face. And then as I started looking at it, as I started going back and rereading through it, you see where you can see the feminine, you still see the feminine features. You still see that it is, you know, it's, you know, I don't know how to really put it, but I think it's one of those things where I had to take some time to actually just stare at Cheetah and see her, you know, right up front there. And you got that contrast between her look and Diana's look, you know, with her with the anger and the rage, and Diana's, you know, pleading to her for help to find Themyscira, to help me find my way back home. And I love just how, you know, you get that moment there. And I'm curious to see how this plays out, if there's going to be, if, you know, in a couple weeks when we have part 2 of this, you know, are we going to get a throwdown? Are we going to get talking? What are we going to get out of this? And I think that for me is if you walk away ending an issue going, man, I want to read the next one, really good ending.
Well,
you know,
it's not a couple weeks, it's actually a month. Because in a couple weeks is the beginning of year 1.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I do love that this book's twice monthly, though.
Yeah.
And I actually like that we're going to be getting the year 1 story. And my understanding is, if I understood, because I've seen, I follow Nicholas Scott on Facebook, and I do encourage you, if you've got favorite comic writers and artists, and they're available on Facebook or Twitter or DeviantArt or wherever, you know, I mean, the various social media, that they reach out and like follow them, because it's very interesting. Nicholas Scott was, I think, alluding to the fact that some of the stuff that she was doing for the past plays off in present day as well. And I like that. I like that synergy, that there's going to be some things introduced in year 1 that are going to play out in present day in the book, and that these stories are going to have an impact on each other. I love that. I'm really excited and intrigued by that. This is a great kickoff for this book, because I was a big fan of Greg Rucka's run on Wonder Woman before the New 52. To have this guy back on board and doing this kind of storytelling with it again, it's really great. Wonder Woman's been touched by some really great creative teams over the years, and I think that's something that's really important with this character. You can't go light on the creative because she's had rich storytelling. You've got a lot to stand up to. You know, Gail Simone, one of, if not my favorite writer of all time, was on this book, did a bang-up job on this. I've loved the New 52 creative teams on this. I feel like this book right now, from where it's been, is kicking it up a notch, and I was already loving it. So, woof, great stuff. Great stuff.
You always say the word Trinity, and this is Wonder Woman is kicked up to the Trinity level for me. Mm-hmm. She is on equal level with Batman and Superman now, especially, you know, and think about, you know, how much I'm loving both Batman and Superman titles. So for me to say that this right there is on that same level is something huge, and I think that is she was up there for by the end of the previous runs. She was up there again for me, and this is continuing and escalating, and I'm very happy with Wonder Woman right now, and very excited for the year one story because one, it's again another one of my favorite artists working on it, but also I want to see what this I want to see, because again, Rook is one of those guys. He knows how to play the past affecting the present. He knows how to do that kind of stuff. He's one of those type of writers who could craft a story that way. So I'm very excited to see what he does.
Oh God, why did I do this? Why did I agree to do this? Jim, it's not just something you say at the beginning of every podcast recording. It's a lead into Detective Comics. Let's talk about that book, because I agree with you on the quality of that. And I don't want my comments about Wonder Woman to diminish at all my love for Detective Comics. It just, for me, was such a rich and pleasant surprise. I think Detective Comics I knew was going to be a home run. I knew this was going to be a book when they showed the cast that I was going to dig. Batwoman and Batwoman's training. One of the things about Batwoman, we thought Bruce was kind of brutal in his training styles and kind of detached from the crew that he's working with. Boy, Batwoman takes it to a whole new level of pain, and wave after wave, where we've got spoilers saying can't catch my breath. At first I was like, man, she's being cruel. When I reread this on my second read through, I'm like, I got to remember, we've already seen what they're going up against. We know what's coming. Batwoman's preparing them in a way, if they make it through Batwoman's training, they can handle anything.
Yeah. And I tell you, that's, part of the thing with, a lot of the your special operations units and stuff like that. They tear you down so you're at the point of pure exhaustion, and then you get rebuilt. You get basically reborn. And that's what she's doing here. And I love the fact that, after completely abusing them and just breaking them down, she then pointed out saying, hey, Stephanie, the amount of energy you're exerting in your fighting is going to bring you down in a long battle. And we saw that where she couldn't catch her breath. Cassandra, with she's got where she's so good at fighting, she's going to keep jumping around. Well, she needs to focus on her combat. She needs to focus on her thing. And of course, Clayface was cracking me up because he needs to learn how to fight other than just smothering people. I love just how it was pointed out. I love this layout, especially because when this first starts, I'm thinking, okay, this is a flash forward, and I see this massive mob of Jokers coming at him. Like, holy crud! But then you see, Batwoman there. Like, what is this? And it's the mudroom, and I love using Clayface's body, craziness to create a danger room for all intents purposes. I love this situation. I love this opening, and this was one of those things. Like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's the part that I really like about this, is outside the box thinking. And you're right, I love the Danger Room reference because I'm a huge fan of the X-Men and that whole premise. This was a great use of Clayface. It was something that was really different with her. I like how Clayface says, and besides him, who asked me how I would feel? and that's really the true point of all this thing. What does it do to Clayface when you do something like this? I really loved the premise. Tim Drake's costume, I think, was a brilliant move to kind of go back to a hybrid of what his costume looked like in his early origins to a hybrid of what Dick Grayson Robin New 52, I'm sorry, not New 52, yeah, the Dick Grayson Robin New 52 costume looked like. Right. I like kind of the melding of that. I'm a big fan of Tim Drake, as are you, and seeing him like this and seeing him in a role where he's more seasoned. I like him standing out over the rest of the crew and being that guy that can step up and say, hey, override, I'm trusted here. You're pushing us 3 hours, little too much. I have to say this, though, as much as I love Tim, I started off this issue being on the side of Team Tim. In the reread, I was on the side of Batwoman because of what they're up against.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and exactly with what you said initially, I was like, yeah, Tim made the right call. And then, you started thinking about it, going, you know what? she's in charge of the training. She's in charge of the lead. It's, and in a way, you don't want to see her disrespect Tim and treat him like a recruit, but you got to respect the chain of command. You got, especially in a dangerous situation, in a real life dangerous situation, everybody has to have faith in the command, and in the leadership structure. Part of me wishes, that she would have been in the mudroom with them. I think that kind of would have been a neat little trick, showing her fighting alongside of them and training along with her, with the team on this. I think that would have been kind of a neat thing. But to be honest, I don't want to take away from the fact that she had to sit back and she had to watch and she had to, critique what they were doing right and wrong, and and change the variables. So in a way, I understand why she wasn't there. But part of me is like, I think that would have been a neat thing, showing her, and maybe down the line we'll see that, with her training with them. But I think, it's, again, I love the training sequence. I love this, this opening, the way they opened with power. Again, you hit, hard right from the start. It was outstanding. And then after you get this really cool stuff, things kind of calm down and you start seeing people settle in. And I like just to get the human side of the story as well as the bat side of the story.
I love when you can talk about a book and you're like, I'm making it my second, but man, is it a close second, because I'm like almost arguing with myself, or I'm like, am I really saying this is second? Because of the fact I'm looking at the Batwoman sequence, I needed to see how each of you respond past the point of exhaustion. I needed to see how your forms broke down, because they did. And, she wasn't being vicious about it. She was just making that point, being firm. This is what happened here. I needed to see if it would. It did. Here's why. She's analyzing them. Stephanie's talking about how we got this superhero base. Let's get around to the superheroing. That is part of the problem here. We're not going out and doing the fun superheroing kind of, adrenaline thrill rush thing. We're building a squad. There's a difference between the mentality. This isn't about the rush of saving people and doing all that. This is about making you better so you can handle what's coming. And the distinction is really rich here, and I love the fact that you've got different experience levels, you got different understanding of where this is going, and the debate feels we talked about in the Wonder Woman book about how human everything felt, how alive everything felt, and how multi-layered everything felt. This book has that same richness in it, and I'm really loving the way that this book is playing out. I'm loving the depth of writing on this. Again, another book that's very beautiful in the artwork for very different reasons. And I love the way these teams are gelling. Man, is this a great read. When you're seeing down at the bottom, Batman's never... And she's like, I'm preparing you for Batman, because Batman's not letting this team go out as a squad until it's ready. And you are going to be ready as a squad. And that part, just really the debate, very rich.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Again, it was one of those things that really cinches you towards her side and understand why she's doing it, and puts you on Team Batwoman's side. Now, there is one thing, the 3 hours, I think they were at a point where they needed to stop, because you get to a point where, you want them to get to a point of exhaustion, see how they break down. Well, they were already at that point. They were already at the breakdown point. And I think, so in a way, it was right for Tim to step in, but, I still keep going back and forth, because part of me always will trust Tim's judgment because it's Tim, but it's one of the, again, having a debate with myself over this issue, it gets me, there's each side has a powerful argument, and each side told that powerful argument in just a couple pages, and you understand, you see where each one's coming from. And I think, again, great writing that can get me thinking off page, that can get me thinking, tries to get me into the mind of the characters, and speaking of getting into the mind of the characters, I'm absolutely loving Clayface in this.
Yep.
I especially love the fact that he asked if he could borrow the bracelets that let him keep in Basil's form, for 3 hours. And I love this. He's like, I could actually go on auditions with these things, I think. And I love the fact that, you get this from this guy, because Clayface is always one of those characters that there's a lot of stories where you feel bad for the guy. Like, it was an accident that turned him into this monster. It was his accident. Yeah, he's killed people. Yeah, he's done bad things. But you ask yourself, what if he had never, what if that had never happened to him? What if he had been always just this actor? Would he have gone down a road of crime, or would he be just an actor on the screen? I loved seeing that sequence.
He may be the sleeper hit of the story, because I'm with you. I'm really enjoying every time we get to see him. I think we're seeing something fresh and interesting out of him. It's a character who I thought, that's a neat twist to put him on. Now I'm telling you, this issue just made me a believer. It goes beyond he's a neat twist. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. I can't wait to see this team continue to evolve, the dynamic continue to evolve from this team. It's something very, very different in a Bat book. I was a big fan growing up of Batman and the Outsiders, especially when that team kicked off. It was really great to see Batman leading his own team. And I wasn't really, when this was originally kicking off, connecting it with that book. Here's what I like about this. When Batman and the Outsiders came up, I wasn't connecting that with much of anything because it was new. It was a new idea and a new concept. This has that flavor, and I hope it has the same legs, because I really enjoyed that series growing up, and this feels very current. It's contemporary. It's an interesting take. It brings in some characters that I've loved, and not reinvents them, gets back to their roots, because I think Orphan is fantastic. I saw on a couple of threads where it was clearly people who weren't reading the material, or if they were, they were only doing a cursory read. They're Orphan, that was the best name you could do. Well, didn't you read the story that showed why she has that name now? I think it's a great name considering her origin in this particular universe. But what's more important to me than the name is the way she's behaving. When Stephanie's ready to lose it and she goes, stay. Where Stephanie, I shouldn't say ready to lose it. It's more Stephanie's getting overwhelmed. She's hitting her breaking point. She jumps in and protects her friend, and I love that. I love that relationship. I've always enjoyed the relationship between those two characters, and I'm glad they're developing it in this world, because it was something that's very important to me, that friendship in this. And that's something I'm really digging as well, the friendships that are reforming and feeling natural.
Yeah, and it's funny because you've got that friendship, you've got the relationship between, Spoiler and Robin, you've got and also even the references that Harper is still one of Orphan's friends. So she's got the two different friends, and I love the fact she explains in the book that Orphan doesn't go back to her place. She either stays with Harper or she stays with Stephanie, depending on what side of town she's beating people up in. And I thought that for me was just a great, just little nod to, this character. Again, gets a little bit more into insight into who she is, and especially her she's got the two friends, the two people she trusts. And I love just how, again, without saying that much, they're letting us in, and it was I don't know. It was just one of those things where I kept picturing in my mind just, eventually down the road, the three of them having a place, or, one of them getting a bigger place so that she's got more room instead of just crashing on a couch. Or there's so many different variations. I thought, especially like Birds of Prey, I would love to see the three of them, Harper, Stephanie, Orphan, along with Batgirl, in the Birds of Prey, and throw in Black Canary as well, maybe for the mix to really spice things up. I think, you just, looking at just how they're working here, I'd love to see them in that title as well. There's so many different things I want to see right now that I'm like, there's no way they could physically pull it off, but it's, that there's a possibility that it could happen down the road.
The thing I really love was this sequence right here. Can I just ask, why did you bring me in for this? Not just tonight, all of it. Why this new suit? Why the new mission? You always insisted you weren't Robin. You always kept yourself at a distance. I respected that. But I need you to know, you were Robin. To me, at least. You don't have to pull away anymore, Tim. You can come in. Gotham City is safer with you in it. And the pause and thanks, Bruce. Was there anything else? No. And then we find out later that Tim, because of the nature of how smart he is, has been accepted to a major university. And this is a chance for him to grow and to become something more and to have a worldwide impact. But yet, there's that loyalty to Bruce and that nod from Bruce. You don't get that very often from Bruce. And that moment was pivotal, and I love that had an impact and an effect on Tim. Be very curious to see where that story goes with Tim in this. Because I could see being torn when you get that kind of nod, especially. And yet, Bruce, I think, would want him to pursue that opportunity as well, and yet would also be very torn because of what Tim brings to the table. It's very interesting. We talked about in the past what a great successor for Batman that Tim would be, and I think this storyline just broadcasts it even more when you get to see him in those moments. He has really some great allies that would be potential great people to take over as Batman. Tim is certainly one of them.
Oh God, yeah. I've always been one of those people saying he should be the heir to the mantle. But now, of course, I'm like Damian. I really would like to see Damian in the role, just because I think it's not even just because of the family bloodline, but because of Damian is just so awesome. Dick Grayson Batman was phenomenal. He could put on the cowl anytime. Tim could put on the cowl anytime. Damian, once he grows a little bit more, he can put on the cowl. So I think they've got a lot of options. And I'm curious to see when Tim finally does tell Bruce what's going on. Because Bruce is going to be supportive of him. And Bruce is going to be like, hey, but is Bruce going to be like, why didn't you tell me sooner? Will that cause friction because Tim kept it from him? Or will that cause friction because maybe does Bruce actually know about it already? Because he is Batman. Does he already know? And this sequence here was a really cool moment because, one, it showed the relation, really cemented that those two are in a relationship. Two, it adds to the continuing story of Tim because he's got possibility and potential to do just as much good out of the costume as he does in. And I think that's something that it'll lead to more questions, lead to more, what ifs kind of story for Tim Drake.
I agree with you. That's a fun part of this now. And anything, I think this series has done a great job of being a linking thread with who Tim was before he became the Tim Drake that we saw in Teen Titans in the New 52, but also kind of fleshing him out as a character in the DC Universe, getting him really back to who we've known and loved. I think the writers of the Teen Titans have done, the various writers, have done a great job of getting Tim back to his core. I think this book is doing a great job of finishing that process off. I think now we've done the full turn of, okay, Tim's got enough experience now and has been through enough that we got him back to where the character was status and stature-wise prior to the New 52. And I think that makes the Stephanie relationship feel that much more valid. It makes bringing Orphan in, it makes her relationship with his relationship with Batwoman seem more real, his relationship with Batman. The moments with Dr. Tompkins, straight on through, I think were just really, really great. This book did not waste a page. And that pacing was phenomenal to me. I really, really enjoyed this read. It's very fresh.
Stennis Simul. We stand together. The Kane family motto. I loved these sequences between father and daughter. Again, anytime, all in the previous universe, when you got Batwoman working with her father, with him, with the Team Batwoman concept, I love just how this is playing out, and especially because it kind of cements that theory I had before in my mind. I figure we got one of two ways this is going to go. Either the dad's going to be the big bad, or they're setting us up to make us think the dad's going to be a big bad. I don't know which way it's going to go, and I love the fact that I still have doubt in my mind that he may not be the big bad here, but it's all the signs are really pointing towards that.
I think you nailed that one, to be honest. I think this issue further cemented for me that, at first I was like, wow, that's really an interesting direction, and Jim may be onto something there. I felt after reading this issue, I'm like, I think Jim may have nailed it. I'm very intrigued by the story, and I'm with you. If he's not, I think the story's just as good. I'm finding watching it, because this could be a swerve too, where it's teasing it and it's swerving you, but ooh.
Yeah, and especially you think about it, because the way that the swerve would work, especially because Bruce, I'm convinced Bruce is thinking this, Bruce is suspecting the dad, of doing something. Maybe he doesn't know he's the colony. Maybe he doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he's got his feelers out on the dad, and he's seeing stuff he doesn't like, and that's why he's keeping her close. Because especially the conversation between Bruce and Alfred. Have you told her yet? No. I thought this was about bringing her in. You said expressly you weren't doing it just to keep her under close watch. I love the fact that Alfred's calling him on this, saying, hey, you said this wasn't about, just spying on her. She's going to be a part of this protocol. She's going to be part of the program. And I love that, because that was another one that really helped lock in that maybe he's a bad guy. But, again, even if he's not the big bad, it's a great tool because he didn't tell, he didn't tell Batwoman that this is what's going on. He didn't tell her that, there's a possibility that it's dead. So that will further give issue between those two, which, again, will further along the story, make for some interesting stuff. Maybe we'll get a separation of this team from Batman, and it'll be more of Batwoman and the Outsiders. And maybe she'll separate herself from Bruce, and I think, again, these are all possibilities that this story could go down. And I'm very excited that it's not locked in. There's nothing concrete. And all these different variations, if they happen, it'd be cool. If they don't, that'd be cool as well. It's, there's so much room for this to go.
The other thing, at the end, when we see Batman getting ready to fight in that battle and you see him in that overwhelming numbers, I do want to say again how much I really love the new suit. It's really got a great styling to it, and it isn't just the symbol and the belt and everything like that. And it's the whole outfit, the gloves, the cape, the design choice. I think is just really, really smart. It feels very, very Batman. It feels very current, without throwing away what I've loved. I also love that it isn't beholden to a movie costume or things like that. I like that Batman's suit is kind of something that is ever evolving. This is a guy who would be trying to improve the armor that's used, that would be, changing the style up based on, the fact that we're using new fabrics and different things like that. I think over time, when you see the evolution of the Caped Crusader, it really is due to the fact that he's constantly experimenting with new resources. I love the look, though. I think this is one of my favorite visual styles in a while for the suit. I just really dig it. It's an interesting choice.
Oh, God, yeah. And I agree with you. That was a very powerful scene. And, again, great way to end an issue, It's there's 50 of us. We have orders to bring you in. You can try.
You want to talk some Action Comics?
Always.
Yeah, that's honestly, when you talk about always, this is a character who I am just loving. And this is a great example, again, of the fact that these books are coming out with such frequency. The story is continuing for me with much more immediacy. And this whole Luthor, Superman versus Doomsday bit has just been really, really great. The Clark Kent mystery, I don't. All bets are off of that. Do you think it's the new 52 Superman, or is there something else at work here?
On one hand, I think it's the new 52 Superman, and I think he's now pure mortal. There's no Kryptonian left in him. I think maybe that's part of the thing when he exploded and his energy went out. Maybe this guy was created, or maybe not. And it's funny. I hate to say maybe this or maybe not, and not have any solid idea, because I don't. And I think, again, mystery is awesome. When they first introduce him, first like, okay, who is this? And then he's sitting there insisting on that I am Clark Kent. I was never Superman, and I loved how, he's continuing in the story, and maybe this guy, maybe this version of Clark doesn't know that, or maybe this version of Clark is protecting the secret identity to protect this guy, to protect the Superman. So maybe this Clark's trying to protect that Superman and say that Clark Kent and Superman were never the same thing. I don't know what's going on in his head. I think that mystery is going on is awesome. The mystery of the stranger watching the Kent family, and not only watching them, he's seeing inside their home. So his video screens have powers beyond just normal, television. It's not just a camera. There's mystical powers probably at play. Maybe there's super science in there. I don't know. And I want to know who that guy is. I want to know what's up with, Clark. I want to know what's up with Doomsday, with all these different people. I'm like, again, you get started, and each character is playing their part of this overall story. It's not just a Clark Kent, not just a Superman story. Lois and John have a really cool roles. Jimmy is adding some nice support to it. Lex, of course, is Lex. He's wonderful, and I love just how all these pieces are coming together. And then you have these giant mysteries of who is this? Who is the unknown man in the hood? I'm excited. I'm very excited for Superman right now.
I know what you're saying, but I did what I had to do, Jim. I did it to survive. That leads me to kind of believe it is the new 52 Superman. What happened to him has got to have something to do with what's going on right now with, or what will be going on with Superwoman. I don't know. Very, very interesting. And if he's back, what does that mean for Wonder Woman?
Yeah, because if he is the new 52 Superman, is there a possibility of this guy and Wonder Woman getting together, being in a relationship? Or, because, it wasn't Superman's powers, it was the man that, Wonder Woman was in love with. So if this is the same man, if this is the same person, then would she be with him? And again, especially because they've introduced Trevor, they've not introduced, they brought him back, in a full-time story mode in Wonder Woman's title. So now are we going to have an issue with her and Trevor and her and Clark Kent and what's going on? And, there's so many different characters going on in Action Comics that I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, oof. Another part of me is wondering, is this our Superman? The current Superman's one of those robots, and he's trying to reestablish the Clark Kent identity. I don't know.
There's so many different possibilities on this. Because we've seen that he does have in the Fortress, he does have his robots, he does have that kind of stuff. So it could be that, but I don't think he's a robot. I honestly think he's flesh and blood human.
Okay.
And I don't know. It's part of me does want him to be the new 52, Superman, who's just 100% pure mortal, who's human. But I don't know how they can explain that. I don't know where he came from or how, because we saw the body go poof. When we saw the dust, and they buried the dust in the grave next to his parents. So, if they did all that, who is this guy? How is he around? And I think it's, trying to wrap my head on how they could have done this flip-flop, how they could have done the swerve. And aside from cloning, I don't see how they could have done this. And I don't want to think he's a clone, because I don't think it's going to be that easy of an explanation. I think there's going to be more to it than that. And it's, I'm curious to see it. It's one of those things where there's so many elements of the story that I want to see more of, that I'm very excited that I'm glad this is one of those bi-monthly, because the story will keep coming out, twice a month, as opposed to having to wait, 30 days for the next part of the story.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think is really key to me. I'm excited for more. I honestly, one of the great things about a good mystery is you read it and you're kind of like, do I really need to know right now? Simple answer is no.
Oh, God, yeah. You definitely don't need to know, because they're going to tell us to. I have confidence in the team that we'll learn eventually who everything is. We'll learn it played out, and we're going to learn it in the evolution of the story. And I think that, for me, is the excitement of it, that I know I don't want any spoilers. If anyone were to find out the secrets, I wouldn't want to know it, because I'd want to see it as it unfolds. I think for me, one of the big standouts in this issue has been Lois. Because I loved how she's reacting to Clark fighting Doomsday. And just all the emotions coming back, and how she's trying to put on that brave face for her son about, because I love the kid. He's like, Doomsday, a name like Doomsday, must be pretty tough. not so tough your dad can't handle him, and he's like, and you can see just the panic, but it's, again, that parent who's got to put on the strong face, who's got to make sure that she doesn't freak out her kids saying, oh no, dad'll be fine, and in her mind, her mind is just racing because this is a guy who killed him, like, oh man, that for me, again, was wonderful stuff going on with I'm going to put air quotes around it, supporting cast, because I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing her role in the story, because she's not. It's she's Lois Lane is pivotal in the Superman story, so I'm glad that she's there. But in a way, she kind of is a supporting cast in the title, and I love the role she's playing. I love how she's accentuating it, and I love her and John's interaction throughout this.
Back off, Luthor. This is a job for Superman. I just loved that moment. It's the dun da da. I know you throw that out there a lot. I dun da da. I love that with the character. I'm a huge Superman fan. It goes back to the classics. When you start looking at the Filmation stuff and George Reeves and the original comics and everything. I'm currently working my way through the Golden Age Omnibus and really loving the material. This is a character who really has a tremendous amount of history and impact, and there's something classic about him. And you can rework the costume, make it feel a little bit more modern, while at the same time keeping those basic tenets in place. When you're looking at that sequence, though, and you see the battle, and how it goes with Luthor, because Luthor now takes over and tries to help the Team Superman battle, and when that's happening, Doomsday gets the better, seemingly, of Luthor. I can't wait to see where that's going to go, because you got two guys now that both have defended each other in their own way. Luthor's back to help Superman. Superman's helped Luthor. These are two that really are working well together as a unit in this book, even though there's that mistrust between the two of them. I find that intriguing about this storyline. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't mention the fact that Clark Kent's pleading that was never him.
Yeah.
Is that a lie or is it truth? Because he's got me believing maybe he's onto something there. What does that mean?
Part of me wonders if he's going to play the card that Superman took over his identity.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the card he plays. And the question is he lying? Is he? Who is he? What is he? Is he actually going to? Again, we don't know who this guy is. So we don't know, is he actually a part of going to try to help out Superman, or is he a bad guy who's taking advantage of the situation? There's so many what ifs this could be. Again, this could be connected to the big story of Dr. Manhattan, what he did to the universe. This could be a big tie-in to the mysterious stranger. This could be somebody completely else that we don't know yet. It's, I want to see, again, I keep saying I want to see. And I think that for me is why I'm very excited about this Rebirth, that it's done that for me. It's really jacked me up on wanting to get and read this stuff. When these issues are coming out digitally, I'm jumping on them immediately. I'm not waiting the day or two it takes for my books to get here. I'm jumping on it right away because, in reality, I either get my books on Thursday or Friday, depending on, my postal carrier, so I could technically wait a day, but I don't want to, and I think that for me is when there's a Rebirth title, I'm jumping on it, getting it right away, and I'm just devouring the books. And I'm I end up staying up later than I should because I got to get up crack of dawn for work, but I'm like, I don't care because I got to get through these books right away, and I think that for me is. So I've enjoyed the reading. I was liking. I love the New 52. I thought that was a really cool way they did it. But I wasn't devouring the books the way I'm devouring Rebirth. And I think it's they're doing something different, but kind of old school different. So they're not getting rid of what it was and what was awesome. They're taking it and they're tweaking it, kind of like they did with Rebirth of Green Lantern Rebirth, what they did with Rebirth of Flash, what they did with, when they used that Rebirth moniker, how they brought back that title to greatness, and they did bring it back to greatness. Now they're doing it for the DCU. They're bringing it back to greatness.
I think one of the things, and you're touching on this right now, what I always loved about Rebirth in both cases, the Flash and Green Lantern Rebirth storylines when they did the classic ones, in both of those cases, what they did was not throw everything that came before out the window. They found a way through great storytelling to move the story forward and bring back elements that were missing. This is doing that. And to me, what it's done is everything you're saying, ditto. I was loving the New 52 before, too. I didn't, I'm like, wow, my universe is really going strong. I'm really digging the books that I'm reading. But you knew that there was a crowd that wasn't feeling the same way. And that's fair. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. When stuff like this happens, you're like, okay, are they going to undo what they did? They didn't do that with this. What they did was what the classic Rebirth storylines have done. How do you bring back what feels right, what feels classic, those elements, while not ignoring the stories that have come before, keeping the serialization going on, keeping the sense of continuity. That's what people really like. They like the sense of these are ongoing stories. And a good creative writer can take what's come before and find a way to head in a new direction while addressing what came before in a way that you can do it either real simple or with a lot of depth. It doesn't matter which, just connect it for me. Connect the dots. They've done that with this. In many ways, this has been an innovative way to reconnect the entire history of the DC universe to where we're at right now. I love it. I love it. You're right. It does feel better. It feels like these stories I'm going through and not only reading them, I'm rereading most of them in the same evening that I'm, right when they come out. And that's something that, that's usually excluded to like one or two titles because like you, we're on these tight schedules, during the week. It is one of the reasons why, we try to get a weekly podcast out, but it's weekly-ish. We're good for about 3 episodes a month. And that's, we like to get to 4 if possible, but we're good for about 3 because of our busy schedules right now, just because of the way work is. These comics, jumping to them is something that's not so easy for me to plug in. I'm taking a half-time college load besides my job, and I'm jumping to these, and I'm staying up late like you to make that happen and loving every minute of it. My problem is, usually when I read to kind of calm down, relax, settle, and get tired. These books aren't making me settle down at all. I want to get up and run around the room after reading them. It's almost like my wife wants to say, honey, you need to calm down a little bit and go to your room. It really
Time to go to the timeout corner.
Comics make you feel like a kid again when they're done right, and these make me feel like a kid again. I just really enjoy the excitement. I do think, quality of life-wise, this is what I've always loved about comics. They've been my escape from stress. I do feel like these books right now are giving me that escape. I'm digging that, man. This is like totally what I'm into right now because of the fact that these books are getting there. And I love that each of them is different. None of these are cookie cutter at all. Speaking of book that's not cookie cutter, can we jump to The Flash?
Oh, God, yeah.
What another great book because of its connecting threads to the previous universe and what's going on. We're getting to see Barry's whole story and what happened several years ago to make him the Flash. His inner dialogue is something for me. I feel like right now he's one of the characters I'm riding with the most because Barry knows what we do now, almost. He almost knows everything we know, about previous universes and things like that. I like these stories. Wally was doing the same thing for me in that Teen Titans Rebirth. Barry's doing it for me here. The artwork, I've got to say, grabbing me even more this issue. I really like the style choices of this. It very much is reminiscent of what I was loving from Scott Collins. And I just really think that they're making some really great choices on art teams that they're putting on The Flash right now. It's a very, very pretty book. One of the things I'm loving about the Flash storyline right now is this idea that we're having some speedsters that are being created. Like what happens with August. I mean, this is somebody else who's on the police force now who is going to be gaining speed powers. One of the catches with that and with other people gaining powers from the Speed Force is not everyone's going to have the sensibilities of the Flash. Life experience would do that. Here's the thing. If you and I were both superheroes, while we have certain similarities in philosophy, we also have differences.
Yeah.
Our mannerisms are different. Our personalities are different. We'd be, even if we had the exact same power set, our ways of handling that power set would be very different, which would lead to one of us being maybe a better hero than the other, or maybe a more ethical hero than the other, or even maybe we're both the same, we're just a different kind of hero, a different sort of approach. One of us may be more in league with the law, one of us may be more vigilante. You don't know what you would do with that. And the question is, if you have those powers, do you have to become a hero? Do you have to become a villain? Can you become something else? And I'm interested to see where this story goes, as far as people being touched by the Speed Force. Because I know that from the premise of it, I know it's going to be more than one. And some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. What is that going to look like in this book? It's an intriguing premise for me. Because usually we see everyone becoming a member of Team, quote-unquote, Team Flash in the past. This is a different sort of approach with this. I'm interested in where it goes.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because you mentioned how if you and I were to get the powers, we would be different. And I could make a funny joke how you're saying, yeah, one of us would be heroes. And I'm thinking, yeah, one of us would be a hero. The other would become their archenemy, So it's, you never know where life is going to take you. And I'm glad that they're going down this road where there's going to be some heroes and villains. Now, I'm assuming, again, I'm making an assumption because this new speedster, I'm assuming he's going to be a good guy because of his law enforcement, because of the fact that he seems like a decent fella. But again, you never know with that. Maybe this guy is a crooked cop, and we're going to get a law-abiding, quote-unquote law-abiding cop by day, supervillain speedster by night. Or he's going to use his connections in the police force to do bigger scores and do, bad things. You never know where the story is going to play out, especially in the comic book universe where you got the person who you think, okay, yeah, they've got all the check marks to be a hero. No, they're a villain. Wait, what? Oh, man. Because, it's the running joke whenever they first two find, whenever you find that one guy who seems like a true hero, odds are he's going to be a villain. So I'm curious. Again, I keep throwing out the word curious, this podcast. I'm overdoing it maybe, but it is something that has me an excitement to me about what is the possible future. Because if they are doing more than just him, if there's going to be more speedsters, they have a definite possibility of having this guy stay on the side of the law. But you think about it, he's a cop. If he starts getting that power, if he has the power of the Flash, he may start having an issue with the Flash saying, hey, you know what? I can do this because here's my badge. Where's your badge? What gives you the right to do this? And that's always been a big controversy, question, argument that that the police forces have had with their different vigilantes and their different heroes. That our job is to protect and serve. This is who we are. This is what we signed up for. You're just some weirdo in tights. And I think is going to be an interesting possible conversation these two are going to have, because maybe he is seeing that he's a good guy, and maybe he is thinking, hey, I'm doing the right thing by taking down the Flash. Because I am an actual cop, he is not. And there could be, that kind of story that could play out of this. Or this could be a whole partnership. Then, maybe this brings Barry more into the light and brings this Flash more working with the police department. He kind of had some good rapport with them, but that kind of got damaged over time. Maybe this could be the way to bring back and strengthen that relationship.
I think one of the things that's striking me, and I think it's, as you were talking, I was just kind of listening and taking it in and agreeing with what you were saying about what's interesting about this. I think if you look at the common thread of every book that we've talked about this episode, it's really been this theme of possibilities are just as interesting as what's going on the page. It's the thinking about where can this go? What does this mean? That gets you excited. And really, that's the key to comics, right? These aren't contained stories that are contained to singular issues. It's where does this go next? We're going to get to read it. What am I thinking is going to happen? And am I even excited about spending time thinking about that? With each of these books, that's something that they have in common. Their stories are very different, but the premise of they're getting me excited to think off the page. It's not one book that I'm like, this is the one I spent the most time thinking about. No, I'm finding with all of them I'm doing this to this level because their stories are so unique and different and interesting, even though there's that connecting thread of the same mystery that's overarching the whole universe. This stuff on the page I think is really fascinating because it's making me go with the possibilities of where can this title go now. It isn't just the big overarching Watchmen mystery that's going on there. Where's that thing going to go? And what's going on with the world in general? It's this as well, and you're hitting it. I really, it's like, I don't care if it goes to any of those places or not. It's more of a, I'm interested in seeing where it does go.
And I'm glad you brought up the fact that you're thinking off page for all of these titles, because I'm in the same boat with you, as you are, where with every one of these titles so far, I'm finding that I am thinking off page. I am wondering where this is going to go. What about this? What about that? What if this? What if that? There's been a lot of, again, a lot of interesting debate going on inside my head about where a story is going to go for all of these Rebirth titles. And I think, again, if you get me thinking off page, you're doing something right. And these stories are doing that. And the one thing I'm noticing, it's weird, there's a similarity I saw in this that I saw in the TV show with Flash having kind of in the TV show as well as here, where he had this super confidence. And confidence is a wonderful thing to have. You need to have confidence. You need to have an understanding of, and a respect for your abilities, and you need to be able to stand tall, especially when you're a hero, especially when, you're putting your life in danger. But there is the old saying of overconfidence. And in the TV show, we saw that Barry have a couple issues, have a couple problems because he was kind of overconfident. And you kind of see that going on with this Flash and this issue where, yeah, he's positive. Yeah, he's like, hey, I can take care of both problems. But, it's... it almost ends very horribly, and you kind of see that where he's got to sit back and he's got to sort of, you don't want to say you can't do it because you don't want to have that negativity in your mind, but you got to be realistic. You got to be, you got to have a level of planning and whatnot to lay this out and figure out how exactly you're going to do this. And I think that for me is introducing more speedsters is going to kind of give him something a little bit different way of handling things. Two speedsters can handle a situation better than one in theory, or maybe there's going to be a learning curve, maybe there's going to be problems. It's there's so many different stuff that they can go with this, and that's, again, very excited for it.
Yeah, and I think that excitement is really necessary. You got to stay excited for these books. If you aren't, that's where you're going to start losing people. And these books do keep you excited. One of the things I really like about this is another example of, I talked earlier how I didn't mind Wonder Woman and actually quite enjoyed Wonder Woman adopting what worked so well with the costume in the film, but yet also bringing in the elements of what made the costume work in DC Comics. I really enjoy just as much that this book isn't beholden to the TV show and its visual styling. I think thematically, what works for the Flash television show is it gets what makes the Flash a fun book to read. And the TV show embraces it and really makes it work really well for television. The casting is phenomenal on the television series. The book in and of itself is just as fascinating and interesting for me, and I don't think you need to make it look just like the TV show in order to make that work. I find this Barry just as interesting in and out of the costume. I like the fact that it's effortless and flawless, the shift between the two, because it feels like the same guy no matter what outfit he's wearing. And I love the cast. The cast in this is really well written, just like it is on the television show. So I like that. I like that the comic, art doesn't have to imitate what's going on the screen. And, to 100%. It's a matter of getting to the root of what are the theme and tones that work with these characters. It's funny, I was watching the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, and if there's one thing I would say that I loved it, but I think I can see what is missing in it. There's something about the filters that are used to shoot the film that give it a very dark tone. I think it's definitely done to service the story that's being told, but you don't really see this and get the sense of light that you get from these comics in Rebirth. And I think they can have very dark moments, but there's always that sense of almost something glorious with these characters when something good is happening with them. And you even get that with Batman. And I think that's something, it's more pointed when it happens with Batman, like in the moments with Tim, that works. And when I was watching the film, I was like trying to wrap my head around, like, why do some people not like it? Because I really loved it. And so I was trying to more understand where they were coming from. When I do that, one of the things I like is I can do that and know it's not going to ruin my enjoyment any. I'm just intrigued and I'm interested. And I was interested in watching the film from that perspective. And I did feel like I love it. I think it's a very visually beautiful film. So I'm not knocking the cinematography because I like that. But it does have a very dark visual style. And there's certain characters in there that you don't necessarily want to do that too much with. So it's going to be interesting to see how Justice League addresses that, because I don't want to lose what I like about those films, but I do also want what I'm getting from the Flash television series. And that one in particular, I think, is just nailing it. And I want to see more of that. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Hey, this is a weird tangent, and I do want to jump back to the Flash book, but I don't want to miss talking about this. You see they casted Superman? There's going to be a Superman on Supergirl?
Yeah, well, I heard. I haven't seen who it is, or I don't know who the actor is.
And I don't have that on the top of my head, but I saw that and I was like really excited. It's not somebody who's played Superman before, so that part's kind of cool. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I'm glad that they don't feel like they can't cast a Superman because it's on TV. I don't mind that they're separating the two universes. Do you see who the president of the United States is going to be?
No.
Linda Carter.
Nice,
yeah.
Nice.
That part I did catch right away, and I was glad to see that.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just really excited right now with all the DC News multimedia that's coming out. Oh, one other thing that I want to talk about. I know you don't have a game system, but they had E3 recently, and they were showing off PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
It's got an exclusive game coming.
What?
Batman VR.
Oh, nice.
And you play as Batman. Now, it's interesting on this one because it's made by Rocksteady, who's made the most recent Arkham games, and it's going to be more detective focused, where you actually can you can go through Wayne Manor, you can go through the Batcave and stuff like that, but then you actually go to solve a mystery, and it's more detective than action based because you're in VR. So it's kind of hard to do the how do you do combat as Batman in that. But one of the things you do get to do is you start off as Bruce Wayne. I guess you do put on the outfit.
Oh, man. Since we're on this tangent, I was in New Jersey recently because my niece graduated high school, and I was talking to my brother, and he was saying how because they have the Xbox systems there, and he's like, hey, because if you get a game, if you get the Xbox, you and I could do stuff, and you can interact with your nieces and nephews and yada yada. So he's throwing out. He was doing a pretty good hard sell for Xbox, showing me all the cool games that they have. Then I hear this, I'm like, ooh, wait, what's this? Oh man, you guys are killing me because I do want to get a system. And he was showing they've got a couple games that they've got going on for the Xbox that actually looks really cool. And I was like, man, that does look kind of neat. But now we've got a VR, a virtual reality Batman. I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
If you're not going to go too crazy budget-wise with it, if you're like, you know what, I'd rather just get a system that's going to last me a while, I would wait a little bit. And I'll make a decision if you want to go PlayStation platform or Xbox. The reason why is both companies, Xbox announced their Xbox S, and Sony announced the PlayStation Neo. All of the games are going to be backwards compatible. They're going to the current generation games, but what they are is they're souped up versions of the current system. That can handle eventually 4K TVs, but they've also got faster processors. So you're probably in a good place right now to spend some time thinking about which system has the games that I want to play more and weigh out the pros and cons of, you mentioned the connectivity with your family. I don't think you can go wrong with either or, in all honesty. I'm a big PlayStation fan. I love the platform, but it's because of the fact that there's a lot of the gaming properties that are on PlayStation that are exclusive to PlayStation that I've been playing for years, and I like their development studios. But to be honest with you, the Xbox stuff is really good, so I don't think you can go wrong on that end. and I get the family connectivity piece. So I think it's a win-win for you either way that you go. I would just really kind of look through all of the exclusives that are at each platform and kind of make a decision there. For me, I'm excited for the PlayStation VR, though, just because I'm already a PlayStation gamer, and the fact that I'm going to be able to put on a helmet and be Batman. Now, that part, and it's Rocksteady who's developed really good games and really good Batman games, so I'm really looking forward to that part. But both systems are going to have, for every game that's on one, you're going to find 3 games on the system that you've got that are going to be just as interesting. So you're in a no-lose situation there. I would just say, though, if you're not, looking to really go for, a budget version of the system, wait a little bit, get the newer version when it comes out, because then you won't have to upgrade later, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And that'll give me more time to think about it. So basically, I'm in the anti-Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you're actually in a good place right now to really think it through and make a good choice. I don't think you can go wrong, though. You're not gonna have buyer's remorse, because the new games are really cool, and it's fun to have a console and all that, so it'll be fun. But that's neat. I think there's a lot of good stuff that's coming out for games right now. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to talk a little bit more about games on the show, too. Maybe we'll do a pop culture and whatnot on games. And even if we have different platforms, it'll be fun to kind of just talk through what we're playing and enjoying as kind of a, outside of this program, just kind of a bonus episode kind of thing. It'd be fun to do that. Especially if we could do one around superhero gaming.
Yeah.
So that stuff's neat. Anyway, back to The Flash.
Well, one of the things going back to The Flash, I like, it's weird seeing, because the Flash is always hope. He's always that positive superhero. And I like seeing the fact that some of the stuff he's going through inside his head. He even talked about how seeing Wally was bittersweet, where it was great to be around him, but there is kind of a lot weighing on his mind, and he's constantly running around. And you get that scene when he takes down the tornado, and that firefighter's like, "Hey, we got it, we got it from here, Flash, but I really wanted to say thank you." And she's extending her hand, and before she can even get the thank you out, whoosh, he's gone. And it's kind of an interesting moment. You see her standing there with her hand out, and he's gone. And then later when he's talking to Iris, and she's like, "Hey, don't beat yourself up. That you can't be everywhere. That you can't be. You got to take time for you. You got to put that effort. You got to put yourself in front of sometimes other people. And I like just how we're seeing. Yes, but he still is this beacon of hope. He still is this positive guy. He still is the Flash. But you're seeing the price behind that positivity. You're seeing the price behind that, I have to be everywhere at once. I have to save everyone. You're seeing that, what it does to the man. I'm glad that we're getting those type of stories, and we're starting to get this, because down the ways this is going to play out big time, especially when more speedsters get on the place, especially when more of bigger problems, especially when it finally comes to head with the big bad with Manhattan. Everything that's going on, all these little bits and factors are going to keep building as the issues go on, and that's something, again, a really cool story element that's being put into the Flash universe right now.
Yeah, and that's something I'm really enjoying about this book too. You mentioned that really cool story elements are being put in. I like the new Wally. Well, I like him even more now that we've got old Wally.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually adds a neat twist. I loved the interaction and dialogue with him and Iris, where they were talking about being friends. And he's like, "Friend, you two are worse than kids at my school." And I like that, especially with the fact that Wally coming back has started to give Barry back some memories of the past. That he already had something going with Iris, but now he's connecting with previous memories in a previous life. And it's clear he doesn't know that he was with her. But what happens if at some point they do? I'm just fascinated by where this is all going. How much are people going to know and how much are they aren't? I don't know that they need to know everything. I like that there's echoes of that. This is a relationship that's almost destined to be. I like seeing that no matter how the universe has tried to change what happened and tried to erase this world, that certain things are almost magnetic. They're gonna happen. Like what's going on with Ollie and Black Canary. I like this kind of stuff. I don't find these kind of relationships limiting at all. I think, to me, what's far more fascinating is they do belong together, and we all want to see it, and we're willing to go along for the ride, but man, it better happen. Yeah. And this is one of those that I feel that way about.
Yeah, and Barry and Iris is one that I want to see. I want to see Wally and his woman get back together. I want to see Ollie and Dino work whatever they've got going, work it out, but also the Ollie stories are showing his character flaws does make for good stories. I feel bad for the guy, but when he ends up self-destructing the relationship, it does make for interesting stories. So that's the roller coaster that is those two is always cool. But I do like the fact that we have this solid Barry and Iris thing going. And it's growing and developing, and especially with what does Barry remember? How much does he remember of their past relationship? It's again, it's kind of a neat thing going. But I do like the fact that this Wally already has his speed. And we've seen him use it, but it was interesting, the scene in the mall where they're like, oh, don't worry, I got it taken care of, all my homework taken care of. Of course he got his homework taken care of. He can now move at superhuman speeds. What would have taken him all night probably only took him 5 minutes to do. So, but again, how much of his speed is connected? How fast can he go? How can he do it for long periods of time? These are stuff that they're going to explore and show, but I like that little subtle reference that if I caught it I really realized what was going on my second read through, where I'm like, oh yeah, he does have super speed. His homework's gonna be a lot easier now.
It's funny how sometimes on this show, with all the books that I'm reading during the week, I'll miss something. I actually missed the Aquaman issue. I have it. I didn't read it. I didn't know it was there, so it wasn't even a purposeful avoidance. And I love Aquaman. I could not put this down. I literally, you told me, you're like, we forgot Aquaman. I'm like, I didn't read Aquaman. And I went through and read it. Oh my gosh, is this a killer issue? I'm a big fan of Black Manta in general, but one of the things that really works about Aquaman, when you really do it well, is you got to play off the fact that this man is a part of an underworld monarchy. This is another nation. And it's a tremendously huge nation. They're also literally, the people of Atlantis are fish out of water. And there's a pun intended there. But there's also a reality to it in the sense that there's certain customs. Mira in particular is really great because there's certain customs of our world that she doesn't 100% understand, but she embraces because of her love for Arthur. And as they're having conversations there, they're setting up this meeting with various different nations. They're wedding, forward movement of the connection between the surface world and the underwater world. The peace that they're looking to form there, she's really behind because this is a thing that she wants to help him reconcile. So the two parts of him are whole. I love that when the people from the various nations and various different representatives, I should say, to Atlantis are showing up, she's researched them. She knows who they are. She knows their history, particularly the 24-year-old from the British Royal Navy. I adored that sequence. I thought the interplay between the two of them was great. She was very impressed at 24 of the rich accomplishments of this girl, who was clearly very nervous to meet them. The Captain Sark bit I thought was really great, her getting to know him. In many ways, I kind of thought Captain Sark was going to be the one. He's being almost a little too nice, a little too diplomatic. Is he going to be the guy that turns? I didn't expect that it was the guy who got sick, that he was going to turn out to be Black Manta. They completely swerved me on that one.
I agree with you on the swerve. Did not see that coming. I was like you. I was thinking Sark was going to be the bad guy in this issue because, again, as you said, he seemed so nice, he seemed so wonderful, and it was just the way he was approaching her and dealing with her nervousness, and hey, and I especially like when he's talking about Aquaman, what he's like. He's just a man, Lieutenant Stubbs, an exceptional man, a monarch, a hero, I grant you, but just a man. We're all human, we're all human, merely a part of humanity that has chosen to live in the water, not the air. And I love just how he is, relaxing her and calming her, and then even, when she comments on, hey, you did a really good job putting people at ease, he gives her the compliment back, but saying, hey, this is something you know as well. You've got the training. You've got the discipline. You're an officer. You know how to keep your head clear in a situation. And I love the fact that he paid that compliment back to her. So it was one of those things where when dealing with him, I was thinking, okay, he's going to be the bad guy. But then part of me is like, I hope he's not the bad guy because I really like this guy. And then, well, we lose him. I'm like, oh, man, we lost a really good one, too. And it was one of those things where I was upset that he died, but I was hoorahing because it turned out to be Black Manta, and it turned out this was the big move. His opening attack is to kill one of the captain of the guard and blow up part of the embassy. Outstanding opening move.
Yeah, absolutely. It took something that was honestly a very pleasant opening to the issue. I actually really loved it. It was a calm before the storm, but I guess I didn't see that coming. I was really enjoying the very pleasant ride.
Yeah.
Like, it was great to see Aquaman and Mira talking about their upcoming wedding, and I thought there was a lot of political intrigue in that as well because of their way their discussion was going. So I'm like, all right, I'm into this. I'm enjoying this. Really quaint. I love they're at the lighthouse and you see the dog and I'm like, oh, this is neat. I'm enjoying all this. And then we see this political interaction. I'm like, well, this is kind of interesting and neat as well. And I loved how everything all of a sudden just, they got you this false sense of security, and bam! Really great. I love Mira's powers. When you see that sequence where I'm holding back the water, I don't know how long I can hold this. I love the power in that moment, because we are both big fans of Mira from the whole, Blackest Night, Brightest Day, chain of events. I really love seeing her here. I think she's really benefited from a continued evolution of the character. I'm glad we got past the whole Mira's bad stuff.
Yes.
And got her back to this point. This was a good move.
Oh, big time. And I tell you, it's, just again, seeing them work as a team. It shows why marriage can work in the comic book universe. Why you can have them have a family. Right here, prime example of why this works. And we've been saying that from day one when it came to these two, that they work well better as a couple. They work better. The stories they tell are better, and they show the strength of both characters. But something I caught in my art read through after I knew that Ray Delaney was the bad guy, was Manta. The scenes, he's got some great reactions, like, oh my God, wow, good Lord. Well, you see kind of like thing, but there's a couple subtle scenes where, look in his eyes, you'll see a shiftiness in his eyes, and it's done behind the glasses, so it's not bright and crystal clear. So for me, that was a really cool kind of moment where, with the art team and how they did that and how they put it in, because I fully admit I didn't see any of that when I did my first read through. It was only when I knew he was the bad guy that I was watching him more closely, and I was looking and I saw again, like when the throw up scene when he first eats the sea slug, he's like, you look in the eyes, or when he's looking at them, he's kind of like got a shifty look to him. I really like the fact that they threw that in there.
So this issue ends with Mira being attacked, and this tagline, Death of a Dream. And I want to talk about the death of a dream a little bit. What dream is dying, do you think? I don't think this is going to be a breakup of Aquaman and Mira, but I do think it's going to cause some strain in the relations between Atlantis and the surface world. Is that where you think this is going?
That's, I think, the dream. Okay. That's because this is if they're not able to get all these people out, if some of these surface dwellers die when this collapses, and you can see bodies in the water, and I think I see a shark in the water, so there's definitely going to be casualties in this, and that always, that kind of hurts relationships. And I can see some of these people, like this lieutenant, she's going to be backing Aquaman. She's going to be backing this, and I can see her being one of those people who say, no, this was a terrorist attack. This wasn't their fault. We got to keep trusting them. There can be peace. And I can see her being one of those people who steps up, to defend Atlantis, be a surface dweller who defends Atlantis, and there's probably going to be others, but there are going to be people out of this who say we can't trust them. All these people died because they drowned. Well, the Atlanteans can breathe water. They did this on purpose. People are gonna say, there's gonna be the conspiracy theorist people out there are gonna say this was all an Atlantean plot to kill people.
Well, and we did see some people died in the explosion.
Yeah.
Especially when you see the Khatum. You actually see that those aren't Atlanteans; those are guests.
Yeah.
So there's so much that can go on there. And you're right, bodies floating in the water and everything. That terrorist attack is going to be a terrorist attack gone wrong. Black Manta did a lot of damage here, and I love that. I love it. There's a different sort of feel to this villain because of what's happening. Because it's not just about killing Arthur; it's about destroying Arthur's dreams, what Arthur wanted to be. And that to him, you've created this persona, and it's in Black Manta's mind, it's a fraud, and he is determined to showcase that that's a fraud. And I really liked that part of this issue. Aquaman's a character that I've really, I always reference the Peter David stuff when that kicked off. It just made me really appreciate Aquaman as a lead in his own book, because I had not been reading Aquaman and as a solo title before that. I never had the budget for it. I was a big Peter David fan, so I jumped on the books solely because of Peter David, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't get it. I did really not get how cool Aquaman was. It was Tide in Time was the miniseries.
Yeah.
And I just really fell in love with the character. Went back and started reading older material from it and really just became a big Aquaman fan. This book really just nails everything I love about the character. Really, really well done. Great story. I'm glad I missed this totally by accident as far as reading it. I'm totally glad we're talking about this on the show. This is another top read. Talk about excitement. And the funny part is, I've only read this once now because I missed it. I'm going to go back through and read it again. Right after we're done recording.
And it's funny because the British lieutenant, she's there with Mira when Aquaman and Manta are fighting, and so she's hearing all of his rants about how he's a killer, how how he murdered his father and all that stuff, and so she's hearing this one side of it as she's sitting there holding Mira. So that again is going to be kind of interesting to see how she deals with this information, because she went into this going, oh my god, this is Aquaman, crikey, wow, she was in awe. She's hearing Manta say all this negative stuff about him. Now I'm still sticking with the fact that I think she's going to have Aquaman's back, and I think next issue
Aquaman's or Mira's?
Manta.
Aquaman's or Mira's?
I think she's going to have Aquaman and Mira. I think she sees them as a team.
We'll see. I'm not and that, don't get me wrong, that isn't me disagreeing with you. I think what we can count on is I agree with you. She's built a relationship with Mira, and there's been respect there. I don't know that she hasn't had the same opportunity with Aquaman.
Right. Oh, true. Her interaction was with Mira only, and it's, so maybe, who knows, but I'm assuming in my head that she's going to trust him, because she went into this with kind of a reverence towards him.
Jim, we've been talking so much about Rebirth. There's so many titles that I've been reading that I've been really enjoying right now that fall outside of the Rebirth banner. One of them was a book that was really interested in. Dark Knight Returns: The Last Crusade. This is a story that takes place not as a sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, but more a prequel to The Dark Knight Returns, and was, for me, one of the most enjoyable Dark Knight Returns issues since the original mini, for me, because it started filling in some of the blanks, like how did he get to that place? And I was really intrigued by it. I thought the delivery of this was really, really strong. I've got to say, DK3 for me, though, as an event, if you kind of look at this whole event with this prequel issue and then the actual event itself, they really have got all hands on deck on this one. I'm really enjoying it. This is what I've always wanted from something to follow up Dark Knight Returns. I was a huge fan of that, and its impact was really felt, but there hasn't been that story since Dark Knight Returns set in this world that has grabbed me on the same level that the original did. I do feel DK3 is. I'm all in for this one. I'm really enjoying the ride, and this issue came at a time where I'm very happy for this world. This delivered gangbusters. I have that historical experience with it, though. You don't. You read it at a very different time in a different era. Where are you at on this? Like, how has this event been for you? Is it something you've been enjoying? Is it Is it a great story for you? Is it a good story? Where are you falling with this?
Oh, I'm definitely enjoying the story. I'm so much enjoyed 3 over 2.
Yeah,
Big time. It's because to me, 3 really's got their ducks in a row. They're telling a really great conscious story where like 2 sometimes kind of got a little wonky. It seemed like it was throwing they didn't know what they wanted to be. Did they want to be a Justice League story? Did they want to be a Batman story? Did they want to be a Dark Knight story? What did they want to be? 3 definitely knows exactly what story they're telling. They're continuing on. It's a great Batman story, but they're not ignoring the other elements of this universe. They're making them strong, quote unquote, supporting characters in it, but each one of them is crucial to the story being told. So I don't want to just say supporting, because it's a lot of times that has a negative connotation. So the usage of Bruce, Carrie, Clark, his kid, Wonder Woman, all of the different heroes throughout this, and the villains. It's a story that's got a great villain cast, and I'm really digging that side of it. So I'm definitely very happy with 3, and this last Crusade was absolutely outstanding. I love this. This was one of the titles that actually the book slipped through the cracks for me because of everything that I was reading, and when it came out this came out when I was in Italy, so there was a lot of craziness where I had to get back to it. So when you threw this out wanting to do this, I was like, oh, cool. So I pulled it out. I'm so glad I did, because this is just a solid, just wonderful story that It explained so much. It explained why Bruce really goes dark with The Dark Knight Returns. It explains why he honestly, I completely understand the dark turn that Bruce takes because of these events. I understand why he blames himself for Jason Todd's death. I understand all of that. You really can get it, and you can get the groove of it. And it was a great prequel to Dark Knight Returns.
It also sets up the premise for why he was retired at the start of Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Why he'd stepped away. This is a Batman who Joker went to prison. Batman was clearly aging, and he was very beat up. And everything that he was doing, you could see he was pushing his body well beyond. And I really like that part of the Dark Knight Returns concept, was this idea that years of doing this is going to have an effect on a man's body. And I like that premise. I like that exploration of it. He still pushes himself, and in many ways, Bruce is still trying to be Batman as long as he possibly can. He can't give it up because it's who he is. And I think the scenes with Selina are just as interesting as the scenes with Jason and with Alfred. And I like Jason in this quite a bit, because this is the same Jason Todd when he was Robin, who he had this edge to him, and the overconfidence and the attitude. And Bruce is questioning, can he ever become Batman? I don't know. Because of who Jason is he ever going to be able to work past that? And, that's Bruce is looking for a successor because of how hurt he is, and Jason's clearly not ready for that. Jason overhears some of that, though, and this is not what you want to hear. We've all, you have your dad, I have my dad, we have siblings and things like that. And one of the things that you never want to hear is that your parent doesn't think that you're ready yet. Or, and that when you're at Jason's age in this, we've both been there before, you're unsure of yourself already at that age, And you're coming into your own. You've got some confidence on where you're heading. You're young, so you feel invincible. But yet to hear, it almost makes you want to rebel against it. I love that you can connect with Jason as well as Bruce in this, because we're a little closer to Bruce's age now than we are Jason's. I like that it really fits as a reader for me at different stages of my life. We're not quite where Bruce is at, but you still get that vibe through this whole thing. Although, technically, with how you take a look at Batman, we may be where Bruce is, in the sense that Bruce looks older than he is because of how much he's been through. So he may be our age because of the fact that he's been through so much. So it's interesting.
Yeah, he's at a rough time at it. So I think at this point in time, he is closer to our age.
Yeah.
When Dark Knight comes out, that's when he's probably, because he's in his 50s for Dark Knight Returns, right?
I believe so.
So this is probably, he's 45 here.
Good point.
40, 45. So that's our age. So it's, again, and it's funny because I agree with you. I do understand and get the groove with, because there's a lot of stuff that I used to do that I couldn't even think of doing. Like, example, I used to play paintball all the time. Loved paintball. Nowadays, I couldn't do it. One, I couldn't take the pain of the sting of the paintballs. I couldn't run around the woods and shoot. I couldn't do any of that stuff nowadays because, one, I'm way out of shape. But two, there is a mortality to the body, and it's our friend. I used to paintball with a bunch of our friends, and our one buddy Joe, his wife Maureen, used to always make jokes about whenever we were going out to play paintball. Trying to relive your youth, huh? And we were, and so I kind of understand, what Bruce is going through, and I can kind of get that feeling where you're like, I still got it, I can do one more round, and you're like, no, you can't, and it's sad, it's sad and wonderful seeing Bruce deal with this, and I love the fact that anytime he's called on it, especially when the Selena scenes where she's saying, "Hey, you're an addict. You're addicted to it. It's not just about the greater good of Gotham. It's not just about Jason's not ready. It's about the fact that you can't give it up. You have to have this. You're a junkie and you need your fix."
I love that this turned into a discussion of the Sensei Returns, where you're wearing a brace and combat fatigues and going out and playing paintball.
Yeah.
I actually would read that issue. It's honestly so true, though, everything you're saying, because that is something that you can only relive your childhood, I think, so long, and then it becomes stories, really great stories that you're telling. But I love that you're right. There's such an interesting connection to when you were Jason's age, when, now that we are, closer to what's Bruce's age, kind of relating to him at a different level. I thought this issue was incredibly well written because this is a backstory I didn't know I wanted until I started reading it. And I'm like, oh, I really do want to know this. This is really interesting to me. I found this book gripping it because it's a longer book because of its format. And right from the Joker opening, straight on through the story, I found myself really enjoying it. I didn't realize Jason was going to be in it. I don't know that I saw the Joker cover, and I grabbed it because of the fact that it was, more of Dark Knight Returns, and I'm really into it right now. And really loved that this felt like, even in the TV segments that are on it, it felt like a prelude on almost every level to what was going on in Dark Knight Returns. Because the TV segments feel like they're a little older. It's an era before Dark Knight Returns in the TV segments. In their stories that they're telling, the way they're interacting with the world, it does feel like those events haven't happened yet. And I thought that was really sharp in the writing, too. The fact that seemed to have I like that it was in the Dark Knight format, with these kind of segments, but I like that the segments felt like a prelude to it. This is really smartly written. And honestly, as much as I'm enjoying DK3, which I'm adoring, this actually was even better for me. And that's not taking anything away from DK3, because I agree with everything you said earlier. I think because this was such a contained Batman story, I love seeing this Batman and Robin. I like seeing this interaction and the focus on them. This got me more excited for the next issue of DK3.
Oh, yeah, big time. And it's funny because, looking at these fight sequences, looking at just how Bruce is slower, his punches and the kicks don't have that same backing to it. You go back to what he was dealing with in Dark Knight Returns, where he had those couple big epic battles where first round of the battle he got his butt kicked, but then he had to take him down in front of the guy, in front of his people, in front of it. It had to be that big public spectacle. And then his fight with Big Blue had to be that big spectacle, had to be that big battle. You see how this guy became that one. And I think that those were some sequences where, especially, Croc is completely, just beating the holy heck out of Bruce in this. And he pretty much almost won the fight, but Bruce had to get a little bit dirty. And in Dark Knight Returns, you see Bruce had to get a little bit dirty to win his fights. And it goes back to so many different, sayings like it's the age and treachery, experience and treachery will always defeat youth and strength. And we're seeing that in Bruce. We're seeing the fact that, he doesn't have the same strength. He's older now, but he's still Batman. He's still a little bit of a son of a gun when it comes to fighting. And he starts getting dirty, and he's got to fight dirty to win these fights. And I thought those are kind of a cool moments.
You were mentioning DK2 before, and I figured it out through this issue what it was that got me with DK2 the first time around. When you and I did DK2 on the show, I liked it a lot more than I remember. I didn't like it at all, I remember the first time through. And I think what the issue was balance. I did like it much better when we did it on the show. I'm actually liking the theme. I think one of the things that these books do well is they try to explore some themes that haven't been explored with Batman before, haven't explored with this depth. Like what happens as Batman gets older. The human body can only take so much. In this case, it starts exploring what is the psychological effect of this kind of violence on not the adult in Bruce, but in the boy that he's working with, the teenager, whatever. Jason, what's going on with him is a child endangerment, and not talking about just physical harm, but also emotionally what it's doing. Everyone knows that people grow up at different maturity levels, right? And what you're able to handle has a lot to do with your experiences, what support pieces are in place for you. Bruce is not the best support piece as far as being able to talk through things where there's balance. When you start giving a lot of negative feedback to somebody who's already going through a lot of negativity, it's going to push that person further and further away and further down the negative path that they're going. And we see that explored here. What I liked about this one, and I think where it had strength over DK2 is, DK2 I think had an interesting theme it was exploring, and it's why I think I'm more forgiving of it now, and actually find there's a lot of things I really enjoy in DK2 that I didn't like previously. But I think where that story ultimately fell apart for me, and fall apart's really strong now because I do find myself liking it more, but I do think the weakness of that story happens to be the balance. Because I think this story this issue is far better balanced with its theme and being a strong Batman story. I think it's got a strong Batman story in here while exploring this theme of what's going on with Jason. And I think because of that, the theme is far more potent and interesting of what's going on with Jason because of how organically it's going through a really well-told Batman story. And I think that's the difference between the two. I don't know if you agree or if that's, kind of what was going on, but I do feel there's a balance here that DK2 did not have to the same level. And it's why I think this is really strong.
Oh, big time. This has the same feel that I had with Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
And again, because Dark Knight Returns was a great story, and this has that same type of vibe and flow to it. And but to be honest, I don't want to say I like this more. But I can remember putting this down, thinking, "Man, that and it's because it's been so long since I've actually read Dark Knight Returns that I can't accurately put the two, say which one I like more. But you know what? This right there was right along with it,
sure,
easily. And and there's even some parts of this that I gotta say I did like more. But part of the reason I like more is because of I know where this is going to go. I know that, seeing Bruce get beat down like this, seeing Bruce have to cheat, seeing Bruce have to do what he had to do to survive, seeing just, how he's slower and dealing with that. It kind of added because I knew where this goes to, who he becomes. So it's kind of like now I'm getting that other final piece of the puzzle that I was curious about. I was curious about the end of Batman. I was curious about, how the Dark Knight Returns universe, the Batman finally hung up his cowl. And you can see after he catches Joker one more time, and basically gets his revenge for Jason's death, you can see him saying, "I need to retire now. I got Jason killed. I should have, I'm not quick enough. I'm too old. I've got to now retire." And you can see why after this mission was done, this was his last crusade. This was the end of Batman.
I think one of the things I was like just nodding as you were talking there because I'm like, everything Jim's saying is totally my experience. It adds and enhances versus takes away, and because of that, it makes me want to read Dark Knight Returns again. like it leads right into that and makes you kind of go, I want to read the next chapter of this. Oh wait, I have already, and I actually want to go and read it again because of that. So I think that's a sign that's something that's well done. Kind of jumping to DK3 and this at the same time, I thought I read somewhere that Miller wants to do another story after this, because this was a collaboration with Azzarello, and I don't know if he's doing it with Azzarello or not, but it's gotten his, kind of whet his appetite to do more of this. Honestly, if it's more like what we're getting right now in this world, I want more. Like, I really actively want more, because I think this and DK3 are working so well that I would love to see more. Like, where do you want to go with this next? Cool, I'm in, because this is really good. This issue in particular really did it, though. I love the training sequences where he's like, I ache more than usual, but he's still got to train Jason and feels that responsibility there to keep, Jason going forward on that. And I like that this aging man is still like the sensei to Jason, in those moments. I really loved that and seeing him in that, because it's what I loved about him in things like Batman Beyond and seeing Bruce in that role. And we get to kind of see echoes of that, which makes it harder when things go so tragic at the end. Yeah,
and it's funny because you talk about just with him as in that sensei role, and you see the training, and it always makes me wish and wonder, what would have happened if Bruce had done like a Batman Beyond, but with Jason, letting Jason go into the cowl and being that person who's like the headpiece and talking him through it. Would Jason have survived? What kind of role would Jason have done? Could he have been a Batman if he would have had Bruce in his ear giving him direction and guidance and helping him out with like the detective work and whatnot?
Yeah, and that's some of the things that are great about Elseworlds. And that's what's nice about this being an Elseworlds story. It's got its own little universe. It explores some themes in a way. This handling of Jason Todd is very different because of the fact that it leads to Bruce hanging it up and retiring, and then leads to a very different Robin in Carrie down the road. And I actually quite like that. I like that. Let's play around with this a little bit and explore the idea this is a separate universe. Let's have fun with that. I really loved how this works. The whole sequence with Mimi, with the loss of her husband and how she knew him, and the idea that he knew her husband and that he isn't somebody that would have had this gambling problem, and starts him exploring that. I love seeing the compassionate side of Bruce, that he knows people, he cares about people, and he cares about justice. And that sometimes is something that isn't broadcast as much in Batman, because this is a guy whose parents died, and the way they died was a great injustice. So to explore his sense of a need for justice and to make sure that justice is in place for others is something that I always think is fun, and it makes me connect with Bruce, because it's one of the traits that I really love about the character of Batman, and I think this story does it really well. And it just makes me excited. I think this is really well written for that.
Oh God, yeah. It's funny. I read the same thing you read about with one more Dark Knight Returns 4, well, DK4 or whatever they're going to call it, and he said that he's wrapping up the universe. So I think 4 is going to be the ending of this story.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Honestly, here's the thing. I'm fine if he wraps it up. I'm fine if there's other stories to be told, and then mainly because this stuff's been so good. It really has been good. If many, it's I think it's a redemption of this universe that's been happening, and I'm thrilled for it, because Dark Knight Returns is a very special place in my heart. When that came out, I just remember being awestruck. And there's certain stories, like we're talking about Rebirth right now, and it's kind of a poetic time to be talking about this, because when Dark Knight Returns came out, it was like what Rebirth is now for me. It was exciting. It was like I was loving comics then. Something came out that made me love them even more. Rebirth's doing that right now with these issues. This Dark Knight Returns event that's going on right now is making me love that again even more. So I'm loving comics right now because they're just doing some really cool and interesting things that I'm really digging. And anytime they can make, I've been reading most of my life. I'm 45. I've been reading most of my life, and for them to continue to find ways to take these characters that I know and love and to tell stories that are rich and new and fresh and interesting and can still connect with me and still, take that bad day that I have at work and make me feel good, take stress when I'm taking classes, and kind of regroup me, and kind of make me feel refreshed again and excited. This builds more energy for me than an energy drink does. You read this kind of stuff and you kind of go, wow, man, I'm excited now. Okay, let me go read some stuff for work, or let me do that type of thing. I think those are important. We all have those hobbies that do that for us. This does this for me. This story in particular was one of those that hit a home run. I could not put this one down when I started reading it, and it's a big issue. And it's a real page turner, really great depth of story. Because I love the TV segments in it. They're really well written and paced.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm so glad that they still had that in there, because that was something from Dark Knight Returns that I know we both really enjoyed how they did that, and how they brought in information, and just how they used it, and how they took what is currently going, and they were able to predict fairly accurate on where the future was going with the media, and how the media, it plays such a crucial part in our news, and by news I am putting air quotes around the word news, because you look at what we have nowadays, where there's a lot of question on, are these news reporting the news? Are they sensationalizing the news? Is it just about ratings? And we always saw that in the Dark Knight Returns universe. And I was glad that in this one we still have that same type of sensationalizing, whatever, of the stories, and just the trying to take advantage of the body counts and the extreme, what's going on here. And it's a ratings grabber, and I like seeing that.
I totally know you were going for sensationalizing, and
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you because I was really enjoying your rant. So I didn't want to take the word away from where you were going with that. And I love your theme there, because you're right. That I think one of the great things when it's done well in this world with Dark Knight Returns, it echoes what's going on in our world, and it's not afraid to play around with adding some reality, connecting it to the Batman's world, and kind of shining a light on it. Well, what if it was a little more real? What if it was a little bit more, it's actually what happened? We bring Batman down to the real world a little bit more, but still have him doing all these amazing things. What would that be like? And I quite like how it does that, because it does have some interesting commentary on our world. And when it's balanced like this, it just does it really well. And Dark Knight Returns did a really good job of that. It's what made it, I think, so interesting is, while it's Batman, and you kind of go, you're in awe of it because it is Batman, it does get grounded a little bit in some of the dangers of our reality, and does some interesting commentary about that. And I love that. I love that part, that it explores some of those things. It exaggerates certain things too, and it does that real well. But I love the parts that feel gritty and real. And that's what really gets interesting about the book. I love when you see Jason and Batman fighting together and kind of the team up of the two, and their bat cycles with the shields on the front. I mean, I love gadgets and stuff. And sometimes simple things, like just having a shield on the front of it, is just awesome, because it's a bat shield. It's kind of reminiscent of what I loved in the 60s stuff, as well. How they always seemed like if you put something bad on it, and all of a sudden it was bulletproof. And I kind of like that stuff. Seeing the two of them running together, and I liked that Bruce needed Robin there. And he wasn't afraid to tell Robin at certain points in time, because Robin was like, let me take care of this. And he's like, can we just do it together? Bruce said that to him. And I like that he was acknowledging the fact that he's hurt, but he needs to be a part of it. He needs to still be guiding the ship. You can't help but wonder how much of that is to the detriment of Jason. Like, how much of that should have been, maybe we shouldn't be out on the streets right now. Maybe we should pull back a little bit. I'll continue your training, but maybe we let the police do their part and we step away. But it's hard how do you do that when you've been Batman for so long and you've been the force to guide things in this world that you know is corrupt? And that part was really interesting to me, because I get, like, Bruce's almost desperation to hold on, and why. So I don't fault him for it, but you can't help but look at it and go, Alfred's right in a lot of the advice that he's giving him. Selina's right in a lot of the things she's telling him. She was able to step away and kind of needed to step away. His relationship with Selina in this, I thought, was really cool as well. I thought she was very well written.
Oh, yeah. And again, it comes down to the what-if story. Because what if Bruce had backed down? What if Bruce had been more honest with Jason, saying, hey, I need time. I'm not healing as fast. I'm hurting. And when Jason goes, hey, let me go out there alone, it's like, listen, we got to work as a team here, and actually been more open and honest with his mortality. I think, well, on one hand, I think Jason would have been less, gung-ho and wouldn't have gotten himself killed. But on the other hand, there are times in this where you do see Jason being more violent than he needs to. Like when they're dealing with those billionaires who are under Poison Ivy's influence. Bruce is, not, he's taking them down, but he's not doing it in a violent level. He's recognizing their victims. Jason wasn't. Jason was unloading full go with them. And with the married couple where the husband was going to kill his wife, Jason got him right in the arm with the batarang and really sliced up his tendons, where all he had to really do was knock the gun out of his hand. But again, Bruce said, hey, you didn't need to. It's like, well, whatever, kind of attitude. So I understand why Bruce is saying he's not ready, but part of me thinks if Bruce had been more open and more dialogue with Jason pointing out these things, maybe Jason could have become ready. Maybe Jason could have, realized why Bruce is holding him back. Actually, maybe change for the better.
Part of the problem with Jason's always been, though, and I actually like that Millers and Azarello are exploring it in this particular book. Jason, as a character, is one of those characters where sometimes you have to recognize this person has a natural violent tendency to them, and maybe you can't expose them to this. Not everyone's right for this. Jason's not Tim Drake.
Right.
And that's where you kind of got to look and go, was Bruce right to bring him in on it at all? Like, Bruce was trying to, because he, in his story, trying to put him on a better path, and in many ways you're taking him further down a potential criminal path in what you're doing here, because vigilantism is that. So you're kind of condoning that with a guy. You almost need a special person to be able to understand the line. You're right, dialogue could have done it. So I don't know. I'm not really disputing what you're saying. I'm kind of thinking it through and like, would that work with Jason or not? I don't know. You'd have to try. You're right.
Yeah. But again, I think that's one of the neat things about the way the character's written here, because we didn't have Jason in any of the other previous versions. So this is really our introduction to Jason Todd in the Dark Knight Returns universe. So I think that for an introduction and an intro and an exit of the character, I thought that for me was something that was really awesome, because I got a good solid vibe on who he was within this one story.
And this was pretty reminiscent of Jason as Robin when he was Robin, in the sense that he was a brat, he went a little over the top, he almost was unlikable.
Yeah,
and because I remember we talked about on the show previously, I really was all for them getting rid of Jason as Robin until the Cult.
Yeah.
And then I read the Cult and I'm like, oh, Starlin made me like this guy, like quite a bit. So that actually made me vote for him to live. But it was the life and death of Jason was pretty 50-50 at the time. And it was only a slight margin that the death of Jason came about. But this story is very reminiscent of, some of the problems with Jason. I got to talk about this Joker story. Let me tell you about a boy who was born with a broken neck. His head flopped every which way. He was quite a sight. Well, what I should have said was he had quite the sight. See, with no control of his head, he saw things all different ways, and from all different angles at all different times. Everything moving, always everything. No fixed perspective, no. So doctors fixed him. So he couldn't move his neck. So he was... And he just leaves it at that. And he's like, he was what? And all these people are like following him going, wait, what? What? He was what? What? Wait, what? What was he? What was he? You tell me. What such a great Joker moment. Because I love that for us, he's got this grin on his face. He's like, I hooked him in. That was the joke. Not that the story had an ending. The joke was that he'd leave him hanging. He'd build this intense story and leave him hanging with no punchline and just walk away and laugh about it. Such a great, well-written moment. One of my favorite moments in a while, because I'm like sitting here, I'm like, wow, this is so Joker. And when you write him smart like this, that's truly, like, twistedly funny. Very well written.
Yeah, and it's funny because as you're talking, I'm just sitting there going, yeah, because I loved the Joker, his portrayal in this. Again, he's not the crazy, maniacal Joker. You see the intelligence. You see just the seeds that he's planting, and just the vicious and this nasty level that is the Joker. And I think that was, again, one of the selling points for this story was how the Joker was written, how he interacted, and how just the master strategery that we see from the Joker. And that word, by the way, fits the Joker, so don't even comment on that one. But just the level of intelligence, the level of planning that he does, how he gets out of Arkham.
You know what? Well, actually, Jim, I've got to. You know what I think about that?
What? Oh God. Hold on. I'm applauding you on that one, sir. God, did I just jump into that one? Both feet. What? Oh. Bravo. Bravo, sir.
That was paid for by Samab. Senseis against mothers against Batman. This story is really, you're right. There's a certain strategy to this whole thing. It's a very well written, very well paced story. I love all of the segments in this whole thing. I thought were really well written and gave you a sense of a potential future path for Batman. And I always thought that The Dark Knight Returns was that, a potential future path. I never felt this one needed to be rolled into continuity, except of its own. Give it its own continuity, and let's play around with it. And I'm glad that they're exploring that more now in this phase. I don't know if we'll ever get any continuation to the All-Star Batman and Robin, because there was supposed to be that All-Star Robin the Boy Wonder, and that seems to have kind of drifted to the point where I don't know if we're going to see it or not. I'd kind of like to, just because I'm enjoying all this now. Like, it's gotten me motivated, because wasn't that All-Star Batman and Robin supposed to be set in this universe?
That's what everyone kept saying, but I personally never saw any confirmation from Miller.
Yeah. So I don't know that I care one way or another. I just, this has me, really excited. And honestly, I enjoy this even more than All-Star Batman and Robin, because, remember, that was the one where we were kind of debating, does that feel like Batman or not? Because he's really a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't feel that with this. I feel like I like Batman in this. I really enjoy him. I like Jason, actually, kind of understanding what he's going through. Where you're kind of looking at him like, oh, I can kind of sympathize with this kid in this violent world. And that's one of the things I liked about this story is I just really found it well-paced. I found the characters likable. I found the premise that they were exploring really interesting because I found myself on both sides of it. Is Batman doing child endangerment? Well, I don't know. It's hard not to argue in favor that may be a true thing, but then it's Batman. So there's that interesting part of this whole thing that really was a fun exploration, and that's a well-written story. I found that the premise and what it was exploring really worked because of how strong the story was surrounding it. The actual death of Jason is something, because I know you talked about the whole croc battle and everything already. The actual death of Jason was something that I found interesting because it almost was like so much had gone on. The Joker escape was brilliant, and we saw so much of how hurt Bruce was. Jason going off on his own and kind of trying to prove himself and getting killed because of that. Bruce would hang it up almost out of guilt. And yeah, that part, I really felt like this left a very strong impression as far as I don't know that I ever need a story to tell me what happens after this. Because I feel like I can kind of fill in the blanks already. I'd be fine if they explore it. If there's a good story to be told after this, cool. About him actually hanging up the collar, what that looked like, all right. But this story left me in a place where I could fill in the blanks on my own with my own assumptions on where this is going to go. And that's what I thought was really strong about it. I was able to, fill in, these are the events that likely took place between this time and Dark Knight Returns. And that's a great sign. We were talking before with Rebirth that we liked that each of those stories made us think off the page. This one made me think about everything that would happen in between this and Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, God, yeah. Especially thinking about how does the Joker present the dead body of Robin to Bruce? Because there had to be some type of spectacle. And how does Bruce eventually take down the Joker? Because, as Dark Knight Returns, the Joker's already incarcerated. Actually, the Joker was in a coma. So Bruce beat the Joker into a coma, for vengeance. So he dang near kills him. So that's, again, I can imagine in my head. So technically I don't need the story, but if they were to do it, that would be great. But I like the fact that they call this the Last Crusade. Like how they are saying this is the end of Batman. This is right before he retires. As you said, I can completely see this guy turning into that guy that we saw in Dark Knight Returns. I completely understand why he would hang it up, why he would take so much heavy blame for Jason's death. There's so many different. I was like, man, this is awesome. It adds to why, because you think back to when Bruce first put back on the cowl in Dark Knight Returns, he wasn't, I don't want to say likable, but he wasn't the Batman we are used to. Well, this is given really good explanation as to why he was that way.
The sad part is Jason left before hearing the full conversation.
Yeah.
Because where the conversation went with Bruce and Alfred, if Jason had heard all of that, I think he not only would have stayed, but he would have felt a stronger connection with Bruce. I love that Bruce was seeing that Jason was more like him than he realized through Alfred's dialogue of saying, listen, sir, I don't think you're forgetting when you kicked this off, you were young and you loved the fight. And you're forgetting that part of it as you've gotten older because your battle has changed as you matured. You were that guy at one point. And Bruce is even reminiscing that, like, Jason has certain skills that are better than his and has the potential to even surpass him. I loved that dialogue. Like, seeing that, it was almost, that's why it was so bittersweet at the end when you saw Jason die. And I'm like, man, this is another story that made me love this era of Jason Todd. Because I like Red Hood a lot. I like where the character's gone in the DC universe now. But I remember as Robin, he was one of the characters where, like, I was really a story away from voting him off the island myself. I love that this story gave me that same sense of, I would have, you know what? If the cult never happened, this story would have made me vote for him to live.
Yeah.
Really cool story.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We already have a couple of voicemails for our next episode. We'd love to have you part of it, so please feel free to call in. We will be airing those on our next episode. Check out RagingBullets.com, our show website. That's where we'll give you information on when the new episodes are going to be released. It also links to our Twitter, where we blast out new episodes when they come out. We have a Facebook fan page and a Facebook group community. That community is great. People shout out podcast blogs. They shout out news that's going on. Jeremy and the whole crew over there actually do just such a great job of shouting out whatever's going on in comics and pop culture. They do all kinds of regular events and chats and things like that. It's a community, and the community really has grown so beyond our podcast. But what I love about it is thematically, these are people who I just really feel like are the kinds of fans that we are. They love comics, they love pop culture, and they're not afraid to celebrate that. And they get excited for the news and the events of what's coming up, and they get excited for any kind of tie-ins across media and things like that. It's just fun, safe, great community, and I encourage you to join it if you're not part of any other Facebook group community. I do want to remind everyone that you can turn off email notifications and things like that. So if you find those type of things too intrusive, you can actually control all of that. So do encourage you to go into the settings and control those things. Don't stay away from the group because of those intrusions, because you have a lot of control over your participation in the group. And I would just encourage you to be a part of that great community. And thank you to everybody who's there, because I just think it's a wonderful community of people. They've made it that place. We are also on Google+. We have our own Facebook personal pages. I'm on the PlayStation Network. Jim might be coming to a console soon near you. Basically, wherever we are, we'd love to connect with you. Mr. Segulin, we are sponsored this episode by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, it's that time of the month for the brand new deals. It's your chance to check them out and to see what they're going to be putting on special. Sometimes specials that are 50% off for bundles, up to 75% off for new material. They also have deals on statues and toys and things like that. They are a digital partner. Link your Comixology account or your MyDigitalComics.com account. Earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. Jim, what's going on in InStockTrades.com again?
Well, we got some great deals of the week, as always, and I love the fact 50% off on all of these deals. Batman and Robin Eternal Trade Paper Volume 2, only $17.49. Green Arrow Celebration of 75 Years hardcover, 50% off is only $19.99. And over on the Marvel side, we do have the Vision Trade Paper Volume 1, written by Tom King, also 50% off, only $8.99.
I want to thank DCB Service at InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to continue talking Rebirth. Everything Rebirth. I'm loving exploring these titles. I'm excited for the fact that this rollout is involving gradually releasing newer titles into the mix. So you get used to these new ones, you're getting to get a couple issues under your belt, then they're going to add some new titles onto it. It does build an anticipation. I'm glad they're doing this versus pumping them all at once. I don't know if you're enjoying that aspect of it, but I am. I actually like that we've got new stuff coming in July, such as Nightwing and things like that. They're going to be added in the mix. I'm excited for some of the new July books. They're going to keep fleshing out the whole Rebirth concept. We will see everyone next week.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.